Hello.
And then we'll get the meeting started.
Oh, Mike.
Evening, Steve.
I think that was Bob. Oh, there's Steve.
Hello. Tommy, I'm at a meeting, Zoom meeting. I can't talk right now. Yeah, okay. Hello, Bob Strom's here.
Hey, Bob. Just so everybody knows, Bob Strom is actually calling you from his phone. So when you see it pop up, 780-3120, that's Director Strom.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
Hey, everybody.
Evening, Chris.
Good evening.
Madam Clerk, is everybody that needs to be in, or are we still working through it?
Are we waiting for Steve Angel? Does anyone know?
That is true. Looks like he might be on. I see an essay on there. That could be Steve.
Okay.
Man, who are you waiting for? I'm sorry.
Attorney Angel.
Actually, Mr. President, John Verdecki is going to be covering this meeting for the city.
All right, so we'll give John a minute to call in.
Thanks.
Thank you, Director Perla.
What does the yellow square mean? Or just means that person's making noise?
That means that their mic is picking them up.
Oh.
So if you're in that view that you see the lead talker, it would tell you the person in yellow is the lead talker. So for those watching at home, when the yellow box is on you, you're on YouTube.
Guess no one wants to be on YouTube.
I guess not, Steve.
It's like Hollywood Squares.
no city attorney yet. Those watching, we can't start the meeting until we have a city solicitor, so. Plenty of lawyers, just not a city solicitor.
President, he just texted me and said that he's on.
All right, he just called me, so I'm assuming he's on. And I just answered his phone, and I can hear myself in the background. So it's kind of funny, Director Perillo. As soon as I picked up the phone, realizing it was him, I could hear myself in his background, and you telling me he was here. So with that, the city solicitor is here. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Stichels?
Here,
Councilmember Hopkins?
Present.
Councilmember Vargas? Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Present.
Councilmember Brady?
Present.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Here.
Council Vice President Fikiev?
Present.
Council President Farino?
Present, I'd like the record to show that I believe Councilmember Vargas is here. She was on mute when she said here, so if she wants to unmute real quick and say here, just for the record. I can see her picture on Zoom. Or whatever platform we're on tonight.
Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Okay. Whew.
No. Glad you're here.
I don't know
Councilmember
what was
Vargas.
happening. Okay, present. Thank you.
No problem. With that, we will move on to the start of the meeting. We have public acknowledgements and accommodations. There are none this evening. Public hearings, limited docketed matters. Yes, Madam Clerk.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just hold on a second? The stenographer's telling me he's having a problem logging in.
No problem.
I know he was on before. I don't know what happened.
It's technology. Everybody gets a chance for their Wi-Fi to catch up. So.
New message is received from Ron Ronzio.
He's having a hard time. You know.
Rose, can he transcribe it from the recording if he can't get on?
Hold on one second. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Can Ron transcribe it from the recording since it is being recorded?
I assume so, but I can't speak for him. I don't know.
I would defer that question to the city solicitor if he could answer it, because he's the one who would probably know better than Rose, me, or Director Perillo. Or Attorney Kirschbaum if he would know.
I've had Ron Ronzio transcribe audio recordings for me for various cases that I've worked on for years, so I know it's possible for him to do it. I think in order to do that, you would have to announce who was speaking so he could know from the tape who was talking.
Well, if no one objects, I could see continuing the meeting and allowing him to transcribe from the YouTube. the council object? Do take yourself off mute. Tell me you object, and we will we'll wait. If not, we'll move on. Sounds like nobody objects. Moving on. Public hearings. Limited to docketed matters. We will begin with attendees. There's a button where you can raise your hand. As you raise your hand, I will recognize you. Let's see who can first. Very good. So I will go one at a time. Name and address for the record. I believe the city clerk will promote them to panelists. Their video will be on as well. I just added 401-787-1958 to the meeting, and as a member of the public, get your hand up. Name and address for the record.
Douglas Doe, 178 Lippin Avenue, for the West Bay Land Trust.
Name, Douglas. Did you have a comment?
I'll try again. Douglas Doe, 178 Lippin Avenue, for the West Bay Land Trust. We sent the council a letter September 24th, referring to various parts of that letter. The West Bay Land Trust submits an amendment to the proposed ordinance 5-20-04 special use permit. The amendment is based on two established principles. First, the city zoning ordinance recognizes that streets may be given special protection in anticipation of future actions. Ordinance 17.20.090L states, quote, additional setbacks on certain streets. Additional setbacks shall be required on certain collector and arterial streets in Cranston in anticipation of increased traffic generation and or projected highway improvements. Second, Rhode Island communities have allowed variances within special permit process with restrictions on the use of variances. The communities are Narragansett, Newport, New Shoreham, South Kingston, and Warwick. And my letter provides various examples. With these principles in mind, the West Bay Land Trust requests the adoption of this amendment to 5-20-04. Restrictions on applicability of dimensional variances. As the comprehensive plan lists goals and policies to identify and protect scenic roads in Western Cranston, dimensional variances may not be granted to properties requiring special permits adjacent to streets listed in the city ordinance 17.20.090L, streets that are part of the historic farm route, and Tippin Orchard Road and 7 Mile Road north of Situate Avenue, until such scenic roads are identified and protected. Properties along scenic roads shall not be eligible for dimensional variances under special permits. Cranston Comprehensive Plan mandates the adoption of scenic roads in 3 chapters: open space and recreation, land use, and natural resources. Specific goals and policies include preserve the rural quality and critical resources of Western Cranston through appropriate land use controls. Preserve scenic landscapes and view sheds. Establish a scenic preservation program to preserve scenic landscapes and view sheds. Identify roads for adoption as scenic roads. Designate new and expand the protection of scenic roads in Western Cranston. The comprehensive plan discusses the importance of protecting the historic farm route or loop. As mentioned above, the zoning ordinance section The zoning ordinance section 17.20.90L protects Western Cranston streets with special setbacks. These streets are already designated for special protection. Our amendment ensures their continued protection until the city identifies and enacts product protections for scenic roads in Western Cranston as called for by the comprehensive plan. Our amendment does not apply to commercial or industrial zones or the Eastern Cranston area discussed in staff letters or the churches or restaurants mentioned in Mr. Murray's letter. Our amendment provides an incentive to city officials to carry out the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. It has been 8 years since the adoption of the plan. Our amendment is conservative in every sense of the word, and we ask for its adoption by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I believe Pauline DeRosa.
Yes, Pauline DeRosa, 97 Cypress Drive. I'd just like to comment on ordinance number 72003, the Citizens Guide to the Land Development Process. As many of you might know, I've been advocating for this document for about the last 3 years. And I would like to thank Matthew Riley, a member of the Charter Commission, for his role in reaching out to the commission members and securing a vote to go ahead, and to Councilman Hopkins and Councilman Paplowskis for their support for this initiative. And I'm very happy that we're gaining some ground, and this would be a great, simple 4 or 5 page document, a guide for the citizens of Cranston, particularly if there's going to be a property directly abutting their land. And this would probably help them quite a bit in determining what their role can be and what the role is of all the departments in the city. I'd also like to suggest that the website address for this document be included in the abutters notification letter to provide additional information to the resident. I'm hoping notification of this document will be highlighted on the homepage of the city's website. Otherwise, it would be of no value if it's covered in layers of documents and rules and regulations. So I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But I thank everyone who's involved, and I'm hoping for a positive vote from the council this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. Any other members who would like to speak? Unmute yourself. Name and address for the record.
Don Roach, 94 Hybrid Drive. Just wanted to speak about the resolution sponsored by Vice President Favicchio in supporting our men and women in blue. I was able to reach out to Councilmember Favicchio prior to the meeting and offered just a suggestion to the wording. What I offered to add into a particular section, this is what I recommended to be added. Whereas some residents have reported experiencing racism firsthand, resulting in mistrust of some governmental agencies, the city of Cranston remains committed to ensuring all members of its community feel safe, secure, and protected by our law enforcement officers. And the reason why I recommended Councilmember Favicchio add that is I support the resolution, think it's good for us to support our local law enforcement, but I wanted to add that there are certainly real issues and reasons for people to feel mistrust, and felt that the resolution would be enhanced by adding in some of that language and wording. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Larry Warner, if you want to unmute yourself and give it a go.
Good evening, it's Larry Warner, 75 Independence Way, and I'd like to speak briefly with respect to the resolution declaring racism as a public health issue. I want to thank Council members Donegan and Jermaine for introducing this resolution, and as a person of color, Cranston resident, and a member and co-chair of the Rhode Island Commission for Health Advocacy and Equity, I underscore the importance of acknowledging and naming racism as a root cause of many of the challenges that we see in our state and in our city. I think that many of us know that people of color, communities of color are underrepresented when it comes to socioeconomic opportunity and overrepresented when it comes to chronic and infectious diseases and other poor outcomes. And so by naming and committing to addressing systemic racism, I think that this resolution is consistent and aligned with the city's work with One Cranston, the Cranston Health Equity Zone, diversity training, and other efforts that our city has undertaken to be a leader in advancing social justice. And so I encourage our council to pass this resolution declaring racism as a public health issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else from the public? Unmute yourself.
Robert Wilson.
Good evening, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Council President Farina. Good evening, everyone. I just had a statement that I wanted to read. Relates to Yardworks. One company that hasn't had to alter their work arrangement during this pandemic is Yardworks Incorporated. They've been operating full steam ahead so far through now 3 seasons in 2020. I know this to be true because we are stuck at home having to continually hear, feel, smell, and breathe in the effects of Yardworks activity Monday through Saturday with an occasional Sunday thrown in. Additionally, as we record video of Yardworks activity to help prove our case in court, we now on multiple occasions have been met with threats and harassment by Yardworks employees, and there seems to be no end in sight to this entire nightmare. I would just like to say a very special thank you, though, to the entire City Council and the administration for all of your continued support. And maybe this nightmare will end before we are forced from our homes and have to move. And I mean that sincerely. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Any other member of the public? Attorney Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Council President, members of the City Council. I just briefly want to speak in favor of Ordinance 5-20-04 as presented to the council by the Ordinance Committee. I was able to listen in part to what Mr. Doe said. I believe the effect of that amendment would be directed clearly at the Cranston Country Club. This ordinance was started as a generic ordinance to allow Cranston to join 30 other communities to allow the zoning board to consider dimensional variances when an applicant applies for a special use permit. That is a basic tool that I think the zoning board should have available to it and that property owners should. That does not mean that an applicant would still have to meet the legal standards for a dimensional variance. There would be notice to neighbors. There would be a public hearing before the zoning board. So this is not an automatic event. But the description that I listened to with respect to the suggested amendment basically would apply to uses within the A80 zone, because that's principally where those roads are that Mr. Doe is referring to. As it directly affects the Cranston Country Club, it would disallow the zoning board from considering their application that's presently pending. So respectfully, if that amendment is offered, I would urge the council not to accept it and to proceed forward with the positive recommendation from the Ordinance Committee. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Murray. Any other member of the public wishing to speak?
Hello, Council President Farina. Is this public comment section just limited to docketed items, or can I speak on another matter?
Just docketed items.
Okay, thank you. I'll speak later.
Thank you. I see someone out there with JM. You have your hand up.
Hi, it's Jessica Marino, Natick Ave, Cranston. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I would just like to hone in tonight on in follow up to the 520-04 ordinance committee change for this evening. I echo the sentiment of the West Bay Land Trust as stated by Doug Doe. I think that it's a compromise. I'm not in favor of the ordinance amendment as a whole, But at least with those amendments, it does protect the rural nature of our city with those setbacks that were carefully placed in our city for a reason. I do think that the ordinance amendment as a whole expedites a process that otherwise doesn't need to be expedited. We are still a very appealing city to many businesses, and I do not think that the current two-step process is a deterrent to those businesses from entering our city. I think that when you purchase a property, whether commercial or residential, you know the limitations of that property when you purchase it. And I think that the two-step process is a proper protection, and I'm not in favor of the ordinance amendment, but at the very least, I think that the West Bay Land Trust's recommendations should be taken into action. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Attorney Moreno. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Give it a minute.
Mike,
Yes, Councilman Stichels.
I know that I see Joel Licker on the screen.
I do. We can ask him to unmute. We've been having some feedback issues with him. Every time he unmutes, we get some really bad feedback. So, Mr. Licker, if you want to unmute, and we'll see if we can get you in. I know you've been having some issues. Yeah. So, Mr. Licker, I know you can hear us. It looks like you have two instances open. You have your phone and your computer. So, I know you're calling about the fire pits. Try to either mute your phone or your computer. I don't know if you have a microphone on your computer, but give it one more shot. See if we can get you in. Mr. Licker, just try unmuting. Anyway, you should work now. I broke the link on your computer.
Mr. President?
Yeah, there you go. Yep, unmute yourself. You just had it.
Hello, Mr. President?
There we go. You're on, Joel. Yep. Should be good to go, sir. We just had you, Joel.
Hello?
There we go. Don't hit anything. Just talk. He muted himself again. One more time, Joel. Just unmute yourself and talk. Too bad we couldn't unmute him.
No, all I can do is ask to unmute.
Yeah, I've done it a couple times. He's unmuting, getting a word in, and then going on mute again.
I wonder if we could.
Yeah, move on and reserve right to hear him when he gets done.
President?
Hey, Joel.
How are you? I apologize.
No, it's all right.
Technical difficulties. I'm only a plumber.
Well, don't touch any buttons. You're ready to go.
I'm not. Talk to me about toilets, I'll tell you. Listen,
and address for the record, Mr. Licker.
I apologize, tech savvy, little bit, but whatever. But I don't know if I'm out of turn speaking about the fire pits, but
The floor is yours.
while I got an audience, listen, this has been going on for well over a year. Number one, I would like to thank Councilman Stichels for responding to me and meeting me in person and viewing the properties in question. Okay, I know this is a health safety issue, and I have tried everything under the sun through the proper channels, and I am speaking for the Tabor Street Condo Association as well. You know, I've done everything within my power to try and get things going here, but it seems like I can't get off home plate to get the first base. I have sent numerous emails. I have gone to call the fire department, call the police department. When this happens, I call the police department. They say, listen, it's not our jurisdiction. Yes, it's under our control, but you got to call the fire department. I call the fire department. They do send a piece of equipment out, which is costing the taxpayers a lot of money. And all they can do is they say, we can tell the people and educate them, but we can't enforce the ordinance. You got to call the police department. And it's just a vicious cycle here. I came to the point where I went to City Hall personally and wanted to speak to the mayor. I'm not going to mention any names with the conversations I had there because I don't want to put anybody, you know, behind, you know, the 8 ball. But I went into City Hall and I said, I'd like to speak to the mayor through his open door policy. Oh, you need an appointment. Okay. Forgot my cell phone at home, went home, called the mayor's office. Gentleman answered the phone who I have sent emails to and spoken to from emails. He said, after what I told him, he said, listen, you got a better shot at talking to the Cranston Herald. Do you think the mayor in his busy day is going to talk to you about fire pits? And that just sent me into orbit. I've had 26 years in the military and I'm not giving this up. My wife suffers from a breathing disorder as well as I did, thanks to the military. And it just seems like that the people who are breaking the law are not getting dealt with here. We cannot leave our doors open because of the smoke. People are in the smell. People are burning everything under the sun, from pallets to a rotten oak, which I won't say, but people know what kind of oak that is. And they're burning stuff with, you know, creosote on it. I've got one person that is a contractor that's burning wood that's got varnish, paint, and anything else on it. And it's just unbearable. And I don't know where to go, where to turn right now. Well, I do know what to do, but I just want the city of Cranston, if we can keep this local, to just end this. I mean, with the addendum, when this thing was, this legislation or this ordinance on December 7, 2017, went from fire pits to cooking. There is nowhere in this ordinance cooking, fire pits are not mentioned. It says cooking of food on barbecues, fireplaces, or grills shall be at least 10 feet from property. Not once did it mention fire pits. And we all know with the people burning this type of wood, they're not cooking on it. They're not cooking on it at all. Because when I took Mr. Stichels, Councilman Stichels, around, right in view of every single fire pit was either a charcoal grill or a gas grill that people are cooking on. And, you know, it's just got to end. I mean, we've got one person that has just recently sold this condominium because they're up to their ears with this smell. They're moving out. I mean, what's it gonna take? Somebody to come down with a chronic lung disease, somebody to die from all this? I don't like inhaling wood that is being burnt in a fire pit so people can sit around and drink and come out with varnish. It's no good for the human being and it's no good for the environment. And I don't know where to turn and what to do anymore. So, you know, I've spoke my piece. I just hope that we can put an end to this fire pit situation. And it would be great if everybody had 5 acres of land and your next door neighbor wouldn't smell it. But I got fire pits burning 40 feet away. And when the wind blows in my direction, the smoke and the smell go right through my condo. And I can't leave the doors and windows open, but they're enjoying their fire pit and they're not supposed to be doing it. I appreciate your time. And again, Councilman Stichels, thank you so very much for, you know, with this resolution and meeting with me. And I appreciate your help, sir. And thank you for listening. I know I've chewed your ear off, but I finally got through. And I finally got through, you know, so I could talk to you people. And I do appreciate you listening to my side of the story.
Thank you, Mr. Licker.
And hope everybody has a nice evening.
You too, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else to speak from the public on any docketed matters?
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, my name is Bob Schoenberg. I'd like to talk about the open pit fires.
Okay, Bob.
Can you hear me?
Address to the record, please, for the.
I live at 3 Brewster Road. It's a corner house on Pontiac and Brewster. I mention that because the smoke that I've been experiencing, this has been going on now for months now, and I've had smoke coming into my house. And I didn't know where it was coming from at first, but eventually I found out it was coming from the neighbor 2 houses down from me on the Pontiac Avenue side. There were plumes in his backyard of smoke as much as 15, 20 feet in the air. No matter what happened, I would always have to, as soon as I smelled the smoke, I'd have to come in because it would irritate my eyes, my nasal passageways, my throat, everything. I had to come in and shut all the windows, shut off the fan, shut off the AC. And it got so bad one night that I finally had to leave the house and walk around the supermarket with a mask on for about 45 minutes, give my lungs a chance to breathe some better air. It kept going on and on and on. I called the fire department, and I will say that every time I called them, they sent an engine to that address, and they spoke to the people. The fire prevention people kept telling me, keep calling us because eventually we'll catch the culprits, and then that'll be it. Well, they caught them 3 times, made them put out the fire, and they only kept doing it again and again and again. And finally got so bad that I started having shortness of breath. I went to my doctor who diagnosed me as having smoke inhalation. And he said that the lining of my lungs and the nasal passageways of my larynx, because I also was hoarse at the time, had all become irritated from the smoke. And a week later, it happened again. And it finally, what I had to do was I had to hire an attorney because my health was really being impaired very negatively. I hired an attorney and he's helping me to, solve the problem. And so far it seems to have been solved. But the point is no citizen should have to go through this. Nobody should be forced to have to close the windows and always be on guard if I'm outside and have to immediately run inside to avoid the smoke and make sure I get the windows closed. And once I close the windows, the smoke would linger in the house for sometimes a day or two before it would clear out. So I urge the council to protect the citizens of Cranston because this is a real problem. It's a health problem, and smoke inhalation is a real serious matter. If you don't have a respiratory problem, you can get one from inhaling smoke. And if you do have any kind of a problem with your respiration system, the smoke just irritates it even more. So I really urge the council to take some action and protect the citizens of Cranston because no one should have to go through this experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenberg. Looks like there's 2 more, Anthony Paolino and Tracy Breton, so one at a time.
I'm happy to go if you want.
That'd be great.
Okay, I'm Tracy Breton and I live at 174 Columbia Avenue in Cranston. So I think the issue with the smoke kind of is a bigger problem than just the fire pits. I think that, well, I know that the city's issued restaurant permits to people who are actually operating not restaurants, but catering businesses where their sole job is to produce smoked meats that they use big smokers with that are pouring smoke into our backyards and polluting our houses and and the business is a good business. The people are really nice, but it started off as a little, what I thought, a barbecue business that's now burgeoned into a very popular catering business. None of the neighbors that live in back of the lot where they're doing the smoking was ever given any notice that we were going to have an environmental issue here. I don't think the DEM was ever notified. I don't really understand how the city can grant a restaurant license to a catering business that doesn't have a sit down inside place where people are eating, but they're doing all their cooking outside with oversized refrigeration units and everything, and we never got any notice. So I'm waking up in the morning with smoke a couple of times a week coming into my house. I talk to the neighbors on either side of me, and they're getting the smell, but they're not getting the smoke. And I do have to say that the owners of the catering business have moved the smokers further away from my fence and put up a fan to try to alleviate this problem. But they basically said that their plan was not to move the smokers for 5 years. And I've lived in my house for over 30 years, and this is affecting not just my property value, but also my health. So I really think that the smoke issue is a bigger problem. And Councilman Stichels says that there are ordinances already on the books that will protect homeowners from this kind of pollution. But apparently from the subcommittee meeting that I went to a couple of weeks ago, the fire chief doesn't think that that he has the authority to do anything except to send people over to tell people to put fires out. So I think if there are already ordinances on the books that aren't being enforced, there has to be a way that we can do something to stop the pollution. I don't think homeowners should have to hire attorneys to get these problems solved. So thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Anthony Paleo. Anthony, unmute yourself and you have a statement to make it. If not, I can lower your hand. Okay. Anyone from the public to make any comments on docketed matters this evening? Hearing none and seeing no hands raised, that portion of the meeting is now closed. Any written testimony to be read into the public record, Madam Clerk?
That the testimony has been provided to Rose, and we're incorporating it in the record.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to resolutions. First off, resolution in recognition of National Hispanic Heritage Month, sponsored by Councilmember Vargas. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
On discussion, Councilmember Vargas.
Oh,
There you are.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties on my end as well. Thank you so much. Resolution is very straightforward. It's a resolution I introduced last year, and it passed anonymously, and I'm hoping and encouraging everyone to also be in support of the resolution where September 15 through October 15 is nationally recognized as Hispanic Heritage Month, where we recognize many Americans of Hispanic descent who have made outstanding contributions to our nation. We have obviously many Hispanics who live here in the city of Cranston. And so I would like to invite everyone to not only celebrate where we can, but congratulate all the Hispanic Heritage Committee of Rhode Island Arts in celebration of their 32nd anniversary, but also to celebrate the Hispanic American community here in our state and in our city. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Hopkins.
Thank you, President. Through Councilmember Vargas, if you don't mind, I'd like to be a sponsor with you on this.
Not at all, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Peplowskis.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. This is a great resolution, and if the sponsor wouldn't mind, I would like to sponsor as well.
Not at all. Thank you so much. I welcome anyone.
Mayor President?
You may, Councilmember Jermaine.
Yeah, I would like to be a co-sponsor as well, Council Vargas.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jermaine.
Councilmember Brady.
Thank you, Council President. Same sentiment. Would love to be added as a co-sponsor. Keep up the good work. Councilwoman Vargas, thanks for bringing this up.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Councilor Donegan.
Thank you, Council President. Councilwoman Vargas, yeah, I'd also asked to be added as a co-sponsor, and just want to say that I appreciate everything that you do to bring this to the fore. And I wish we had as vibrant a celebration as we had last year that you helped that you organized, and I hope to be able to do that together again soon.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
Councilmember Stichels.
We make it unanimous.
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean,
A lot faster if we just said unanimous.
I know, but
I'd like to be added. I often don't do this because I think the credit should go to Councilwoman Vargas, who's done the work on this, and I haven't contributed. So, but I would like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, I was here last year, I don't believe, for your celebration, Councilmember Vargas. So I'm glad to support it this year. And in the spirit, I'd like to just mention something to you in Spanish, if possible. Concejala, sería un placer apoyar su resolución, which it's a pleasure to support your resolution, and I'd like to also be added as a sponsor.
Got to work on your dictation there, Council Vice President, a little bit.
Muchas gracias.
That was much. She's much better.
No. Thank you, and thank you, Councilman Stichels as well. Absolutely, I don't want to take credit for this. I think we are, we're all of what makes Cranston special, and so I always, welcome everyone's participation, co-sponsorship of resolutions such as this one. Thank you.
Yep. So I'll make it unanimous and ask to be another sponsor, and just say thank you, Councilmember Vargas, for as your time in the council. Since you've been here, you've definitely made us more concerned about a lot of issues that that didn't affect a lot of the white men that were on the council. So thank you for being part of the council the last 4 years, and I look forward to seeing you continue to grow as a council person and in whichever future you decide to go politically. With that,
Thanks, Council President.
I think we're all unanimously on it. So we have a motion to approve in a second. So with that, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes.
Council President Freeman?
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next resolution. Resolution of the City Council declaring racism as a public health issue, sponsored by Council Members Donegan and Jermaine.
To approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Donegan.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Vargas. Councilmember Donegan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. This, earlier this summer, all of us received a survey from the One Cranston organization that was sent out to candidates for mayor and city council races, asking us about our thoughts on systemic racism here in Cranston, plans to increase diversity, inclusion, and equity. And almost everyone responded, and I found, I found the responses enlightening, and it was certainly an education for me in seeing everyone's perspective on the matter. And my hope is that that conversation or that reflection that took place between each one of us and that survey, that it doesn't just stop there, that we continue to have these conversations, albeit uncomfortable at times, and that we commit ourselves to, as the resolution resolves, the elimination of racial disparities and all systems of racism that exist within our community. So it's my hope that we recommit ourselves to this. I think that we've, over the past, I know that a lot of us have made it a priority, some of the freshman city council members, and I know that many of the veterans on here have been doing this work for years. So this is just a recommitment to that, and that as we move forward, we continue to work and approach this work through the lens of racial justice and creating a more equitable society for everyone here in Cranston, where race is no longer an indicator of outcomes for members of our community. So I encourage everyone to support this tonight.
President, may I make?
You may, Councilmember Vargas.
Excellent. Thank you. If the co-sponsors would allow, I'd love to be part of a co-sponsorship of this resolution.
Of course.
Indeed, I second what you just said, Councilman Donegan. So I won't repeat everything that you said and how I feel, but pretty much much needed. And we, word for word, every dotted I and every crossed T's I agree with on this resolution. So thank you for submitting this forward to the council.
Any further discussion? Council Vice President Favicchio.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, to the sponsors, I just, my only concern, how do we declare a public health issue? I mean, has the state Department of Health or anyone else done all the research on this? Or, I'm just curious. I understand what you want to accomplish. I just wonder whether, I don't know, who are we asking, an agency to do it, or Councilman Donegan?
Yeah, I can. You're getting at something that I actually gave a decent amount of thought to when drafting this resolution, was the difference between declaring it a public health issue and a public health emergency. And if the council were to declare something a public health emergency, the implications that could have on potential executive powers, or giving an executive powers under a declaration of emergency. But I think really what this is declaring that racism and systemic racism impacts health outcomes and the overall outcomes for people in our community, that it has a direct impact on the health of residents of Cranston.
Okay. I mean, did you discuss that with anyone?
Oh,
the
yeah.
Administration, or yeah.
Oh, not with the administration. I mean, I'm the city council member on the Cranston Health Equity Zone. I've consulted with numerous public health, I would say, experts when drafting this, and one of them spoke earlier. A couple of them cannot be on the call tonight, but I think I don't have a background in public health. I think, and I don't want to speak for anyone that is a public health expert here tonight, but I think it is widely regarded that systemic racism does impact health outcomes. And I do think that there is a substantial amount of data, even just looking at census information for Cranston and census data estimates, that point to the existence of it within our community and its impact.
May I, President?
Councilmember Stichels actually had his hand up, so I'll let him go, then I'll come back to you. You want to yield to Councilmember? Okay. Councilmember Jermaine, you are up.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Councilman Donegan for taking this initiative. And as a public health issue, as a woman of color, that I have to say, any times when a Black person take the initiative to talk about racism, people see it another way, but coming from you, and I really appreciate it, and to be a co-sponsor of this resolution. And racism impact our lives, not only physically, emotionally. It's holistically impacted us. That's why we call it is the public health issue, because I can take one example as a woman who is pregnant, who goes to the doctor because of implicit bias. For example, the outcome are different than a woman who is a white woman. We have some stereotypes based on racism that impact our lives, whether it's education, whether it's economic, whether it's health. So it's a public health, because to be healthy, you need to be healthy physically, but you need to be healthy emotionally. So racism impacted us emotionally, physically. So he's a public, if you need to be healthy, it's not only a matter of having a disease you can see, but a disease that can impact you emotionally is a disease, as well as a disease that impacted you physically. So that's why I believe it's a public health issue in my perspective, and I really appreciate that we framed the issue that way. Thank you so much, Council Donegan, for this initiative.
Councilmember Stichels.
Yeah, I'd just like to give an example of how systemic racism has affected the public health that I read about. There was a widespread redlining, not by banks, where they would not loan to minority people who wanted to buy houses in certain neighborhoods. And so the people of color, primarily at the time, African Americans, were confined to certain neighborhoods. Then those neighborhoods are close to, many of them are close to interstate highways, with the pollution that comes from all the transportation, all the vehicles. And so people who live in those neighborhoods suffer from asthma at a greater rate than white people who don't live in those neighborhoods. So that's one example of where systemic racism, it's still playing out now, that redlining has been at least weakened and hopefully defeated. Infant mortality among people of color is higher than among white residents of the US. So there's kind of a case after case after case of where discrimination has continued because it's been systematic. I know that Black farmers were not able to get the same loans that white farmers were able to get, particularly in the South. There was a discrimination. There was a long, old lawsuit that was settled recently, as in within the last 20 years, to try to in part compensate those Black farmers. So there was income loss there, and when income goes down, access to doctors and hospitals often goes down. So I think it's a real problem. It's not an invented problem. It's just one that I think you need to see the pieces fit together particularly over a period of years and a period of a series of racist policies that have really damaged the minority community in the United States. So I'd urge for passage of this also.
Else? Councilor Paplaskas.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Not to echo all of the things that have been said by other council members, but I will be voting for this tonight. And I'd also like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Councilor Paplaskas.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I concur with my colleagues here. Councilmember Donegan, I think you've done a great job with this resolution. Having spent 27 years at Cranston East and the last 20 years coaching baseball at the college, I've had an opportunity to work with many, many students and athletes of color. And I do understand a lot of their plight. Even today, when I was campaigning down in Ward 1, one of the gentlemen that is part of my team is a Hispanic male of color. And I asked him this very question. And it's really helping me to understand exactly what he goes through, what his family goes through. And I think we not only need to continue the discussion, but take some action on it as we move forward. And I wholeheartedly support this resolution.
Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll add my 2 cents on this. I do believe that systemic racism exists in our society. I do believe that this resolution is something that the council should definitely pass. I hope the council will continue to work to reduce the levels of structural and institutional racism. I know Councilmember Donegan and I were privileged to take a wonderful, very difficult course to take on this last year through the Racism Foundation that was given by One Cranston in association with the Rhode Island Foundation. I know a lot of council members were invited, but just could not, unfortunately, participate. Definitely something that opens your eyes to some of the things in our history that have created structural and institutional racism around policies of the past, issues with laws that were passed well before a lot of us were even born, well, a few of us. So I definitely would love to be added as a co-sponsor of this and would hope that Councilmember Donegan, you continue this work as you continue on in the council.
Thank you.
With that, if no one else, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes.
Council President Farino?
Yes. Passes unanimously. Moving on, resolution requesting the mayor progress towards goals and enforcing the use of fire pits, sponsored by Councilmember Stichels. Let's get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Under discussion, Councilmember Stichels.
Well, I think we've heard from 3 residents tonight, one from Ward 1, one from Ward 2, and a third from Ward 5 about this problem. And I've thought a lot about this problem, and I put forth a resolution because our ordinance is excellent. It bans the burning of treated wood or wood with paint on it. It prohibits fire pits. Another ordinance prohibits odors from going from one piece of property to another piece of property. So the problem, as the fire chief admitted in the hearing, is enforcement. And we heard from Mr. Licker that he calls the police department, they tell him to call the fire department. He calls the fire department, they go out there, but they don't do anything. I mean, I think like all of us, I would have no problem with the fire department going out the first time and saying, hey, no fire pits. You can't do it again. But when they go out there the second time, then we have to start hammering them because they've been told no fire pits, and they keep burning wood and really wrecking other people's quality of life. So I think this is a problem for the administration, and I would like to ask Mr. Perillo, just because he's the only one here from the administration or the highest person in the administration. I think the mayor should address this issue with the departments, but how are we going to enforce this and protect the health and the quality of life of our residents?
Thank you, Councilmember Stichels.
No, that's a question for Mr.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I was going to ask him to respond.
Like the fire chief said, Councilman, they don't have enforcement powers, so it's up to the PD to enforce and cite for that. They can only go on that property when there is a complaint, so that's the only thing about trying to be proactive with this. I can't have police going to private people's backyards for fire pits. So A, we need a complaint, and B, we need to come up with a system where either FD and PD are responding, or FD is responding, and then if needed, PD responds. So it's something I can talk to the colonel and the chief about, how we can try to get to the bottom of why the increasing amount of complaints are coming in for the fire pits.
Councilmember Stichels, any follow-ups?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we're getting more complaints is that Home Depot is selling them. A second reason is, we're all kind of mildly going crazy because we're staying home where there are very few outside options. And so people are going in their backyards. I think that's a second reason. I think another reason is that people are more sensitive now, or more aware of the dangers of asthma. I think we know that if you have lung problems, you're more susceptible to COVID-19, or more likely to suffer more severe consequences of catching COVID-19. But I really think that this is an administration problem that has to be solved administratively. If the fire department needs to be given enforcement power, then you should be coming to the council with that recommendation. If it's coordination, then there's got to be better coordination. But this is just really horrible for these people. They keep, Mr. Schoenberg, who called me, he said, I don't want to call the fire department. They've got better things to do than chase down some smoke in Ward 2. But we've allowed a system, an enforcement system, to evolve where it just doesn't work. And I certainly hope that you could report back to the council if this resolution passes next month on the progress and what steps have been taken. Thank you.
I think the difficult part also is, because I've gotten some calls from Ward 4 saying, are you going to try to ban fire pits? And I'm like, no, we're not going to try to ban fire pits. But because of the different sections of the city, obviously the enforcement needs to be more, I think, obviously in 1, 2, and 3, where the houses are more tightly gathered, and it's more of an issue there. So again, I think it needs some coordination between police and fire as to how we can go about addressing some of these issues.
Councilmember Stichels, sorry. No, you can follow up.
Follow-up, fire pits are banned everywhere. If you read the ordinance, it says there are 2 types of fires that are allowed: cooking fires and fires for fire personnel to practice. So that's the ordinance that we have. So I guess I would request that the next meeting of the Safety Services Committee, which I believe is going to be on the 13th? Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, it's next Wednesday.
Yeah, that this be on the agenda and the administration could report, someone from the administration could report about what they'd be doing about enforcement.
I'm not sure, Steve, we can put it on this agenda. This one coming up is the meeting that we missed today. So everything's just getting forwarded. I don't know if we can amend that again to add that. Might have to be the following month.
Well, I'm concerned that, honestly, I don't want to be a pain, but I'm concerned that it's going to get cold and then this problem's going to go away. And then it's going to get hot again in the summer and the problem's going to come back.
Yeah, we can add it as long as legal allows it.
What?
We can add it as long as legal, and the city clerk can amend it.
Good, I can't ask for more than that. Thank you.
You can go, Chris.
All right, thank you, Council President. So obviously, this is a tough issue. I know a lot of people have been home, and that's why there's been a lot of fires going on. I think we have a good ordinance. It only allows cooking fires. It says what the fire pit can be made of, brick, masonry, that kind of thing. I think it's a good ordinance because it still allows you to have s'mores with your kids, that kind of opportunity if you want to cook and have a fire. But we definitely need to work on the enforcement. I do want to make a friendly amendment to this, Steve. Line 32 says, and be it finally resolved that the mayor report on progress. Can we change that to administration? Are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So line 32, I'll make an amendment to change the word mayor to administration.
A second. Nobody wants to second that? Scrivener's
Second,
change?
I'll
Thank you.
second.
The word change. Any discussion on the word change?
Can we make it the mayoral administration so it's clear?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Motion to change the word mayor to add administration after mayor.
Second,
Thank you. Under discussion, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll on the amendment.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Fabicchio?
yes.
Council President Farino?
Yes. Any further discussion on the, you may.
Just a question. Does Councilman Stichels want an answer by next week, like he said, or by December 2020, which the resolution says?
Well, that's a bit of a contradiction from Councilman Stichels, isn't it?
It really is.
Steve, Councilman Stichels, I really don't want to amend that and give Rose and Leanne more work after the debacle today with the link to Zoom.
So when is it reasonable that you could give us an answer, Mr. Perillo?
I'm thinking, I think November is definitely reasonable.
Okay, well, let's amend it to November then.
Thanks.
I motion to amend December to November. A second.
Second,
Second.
Hearing no discussion, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Fabicchio?
yes.
Council President Farino?
Yes. Any further discussion on the,
Council President, if I may.
you may, Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Council President. I agree with the sentiments. First off, I want to say I appreciate Councilman Stichels continuing to fight for his residents. I will have to do the same. I've received numerous emails of people concerned with more regulation of fire pits We're seeing other towns like East Providence actually extend fire pit laws. Certainly appreciate and understand the complaints that we're receiving throughout the city in more dense areas. But in Ward 4 here with a lot of my constituents have many acres of lands. They want to be able to do s'mores with their kids. They want to be able to grill hot dogs on a fire. And, you know, for the most part, I've received 0 to no complaints. So certainly appreciate the other parts of the city. I know more research has to be done. I just wanted to express the emails that I've received from my constituents.
Thank you, Councilman Brady. Anyone else? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll on the resolution as amended.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
No.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes. Resolution passes. Moving on, we have resolution supporting our men and women in blue, sponsored by Council Vice President Favicchio. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second.
Second, I have a motion in a couple seconds. Council Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. I'll make a few comments before I make an amendment to add some language that I discussed with Mr. Roach. You know, over the past 10 years, I've had a lot of opportunity to work with the police department, and, you know, they've evolved into a really tremendous police department doing work in the community policing, getting their national accreditation, which really sets them apart from a lot of other police departments. And I know that the police have come under so much stress, really, because they've become a target, and not so much here, obviously, because in Cranston, luckily, we have a pretty good community. But we did, I know most of us probably received hundreds of emails from, not all from Cranstonians as well, asking us to defund the police. And, you know, a knee-jerk reaction like that just doesn't help the situation. And you can see what it's done in other parts of the country. I mean, New York is down 2,500 police officers, and their crime rate is up. And it's just not the way to solve a problem. I think we need to encourage our police department. And I think we have such a good police department, and I've worked with the colonel and the majors, and they've participated in subcommittees and you know, working on different things that they didn't have to do, but they take a real interest in trying to improve. So I thought it was something that we should do to support them and tell them that, you know, we appreciate what they do and their efforts to try to hire minority officers and to become part of the community and not make people, and especially young people, afraid of them. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this. And I do have an amendment, which I could make now, unless you want further discussion first.
I think you can make the amendment now.
Okay, and this would come in on line 39, or it would basically push down from where line 39 is. It would read, whereas some residents have reported experiencing racism firsthand, resulting in mistrust of some governmental agencies, the city of Cranston remains committed to ensuring all members of its community feel safe, secure, and protected by our esteemed law enforcement officers. I'm not sure how many lines that will take up, but I'm sure the clerks can at some point fix the configuration. And that was
to amend. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Under discussion. Seeing none on the amendment. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes. Now, any discussion on the resolution as amended? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes. Resolution passes. Moving on, resolution urging Mayor Fund to fund 4.1 million from Cranston's cumulative surplus to Cranston Public Schools, sponsored by me. I will give Council Vice President Vecchio the floor.
Okay, thanks. I'll entertain a motion on this.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion to approve in a second. Under discussion, Council President.
Yeah, so I submitted this. I had it written a few months ago, and I was holding it to kind of see what would happen with the federal government, the state government, to see how budgets would work out, to see when funding would come in from the federal government, to try to figure this whole thing out. I know we removed the funding during the budget cycle, which at the time seemed like the right thing to do because we didn't know where the funding was coming from. But now at this point, we're in October. We have no direction from the federal government as to when they're going to finalize their budgets. We have an inkling from the state that they will not do the budget until they get funding from the federal government. And lo and behold, our kids are back to school. We all know there is a excess of $5 million hole in the school's budget. The 4.1 million I put in the resolution represents the state aid that was not funded due to the issues with COVID and the delays of the federal budget and the state budget. So I put together this resolution to urge the mayor to fund it directly from the rainy day fund. This is a cumulative surplus. That's why we have it for issues like this. And the way I wrote this was in such a way that when the funds do come back, they would go back into the rainy day fund. Logistically, the mayor will have to, work with the school department on that because, as you know, maintenance of effort is an issue. So any funds that came in this year from the incremental state aid would have to come out of next year's budget. So you'd have to kind of work through that logistically to make sure you don't doubly increase the maintenance of effort. So there would have to be a memorandum of understanding signed between the school department, city council, and most likely the mayor if he does go down this route. But I'm starting the ball rolling to work on getting the schools funded. That's why this is before us, and hopefully you'll all consider supporting it.
Okay. Any other discussion from other members?
May I?
Yes, Councilmember Jermaine.
I would like to be adding this resolution. I really applaud you for it, President Farina.
You're more than welcome to join, Councilmember Jermaine.
Other members of the council? Yes, Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you, Mr. Council Vice President. After thinking about this, and I certainly understand the intent, Council President, on why you put it in. I just don't think much has changed. I think the state's going to get to work on the budget after the election. So this might be a little bit premature. I'd hate to put this in and then have to figure out the maintenance of effort and everything else after the fact. Would you be okay with sending this to the Finance Committee and then seeing what would happen with the budget coming up? So I really think they're going to get it done after the election.
To be honest with you, no, I'd rather vote on this tonight. I might not be here come December, Chris. As most of you know, I recently lost an election to Councilmember Hopkins. Congratulations, Councilmember Hopkins. So I have kids in the school, and for me, I'm not leaving this council with this unresolved. I want to know that the schools are going to get funded and funded at least the state aid ask. And the next mayor can work with the schools and this current mayor to try to pass the baton. But at this point, we've waited a while. I think the council needs to act, and we need to act soon, and that soon is now.
Councilman Hopkins, then Councilman Stichels.
Thank you, and Mr. Vice President. Yeah, I have a tendency to agree with Councilman Paplaskas on this. I don't want to rush into anything that's going to have an effect on the maintenance of effort. We have seen COVID money that has been transferred over to the schools already, and they have been using that. I've spoken with the superintendent about her concerns, and they have received a pretty good chunk of money that's been handling some of these issues already. We also have a statement made by the speaker recently that the money will be coming. So I have a tendency to agree with Councilman Paplaskas that I don't want to rush into it. I'd like to see it go to the finance committee for more discussion. And I think eventually we're going to see that the state will come through with that money if we can agree that the speaker is right on his presentation.
Thank you. Councilman Stichels.
Yeah, I guess I come somewhere in the middle on this discussion. I do favor sending it to the finance committee. I'd like to see it go to the finance committee this month. And I'd like to have the school department come in and talk about the COVID money and talk about where their costs have increased above what they anticipated in February when they passed their budget, and where they've decreased. And I think we also need to talk about that number, that 4.1. Is that the right amount to urge the mayor to give them? I don't see how we could do that we could give them that money and then say that state aid would repay us, because the legislature is going to pass state aid for education that's got to be used for education. I don't think we could say that some of that money would have to come back to the city, but that's an issue that also could be discussed at a hearing.
Yeah, through the chair, back to Councilman Stichels. I don't mind going to this month's finance committee, but I don't want to wait until, after the election, because at that point, I think I don't think anything's going to happen until next year at this point with everything that's been happening. And having spoken with the speaker, having spoken with our federal members and our federal legislation, their feeling is the same, that it probably won't happen until at least the middle of November to start. So I have no problem with taking this to the finance committee meeting, but it's a discussion we have to have that everyone seems to have been avoiding for the last 2 months. And I understand why we're in a deep election, but now I think it's a discussion we as a body have to have, because it's our responsibility to fund the schools.
Well, I'll make a motion then that we refer this to the October Finance Committee, and that we invite the school department to give a detailed presentation on their financial situation and projections.
And I will second that, Councilman Stichels.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion to send it to the finance committee?
Council Vice President Vecchio, this is Bob.
If I may.
Yes, Councilman Brady, do you want to yield to Mr. Strom, or do you want to go for it?
Sure.
All right,
Yield.
Mr. Strom.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a few things. As you know, when we did the budget, we had 4.1 million in it. The council amended the budget to take the 4.1 million out, as Council President Farina stated, not knowing what was going to happen. As from our information, it seems like something in the middle of November should happen, and we should know what type of funding we're going to get for school aid. That's one thing. The second thing is, when you have the school as an invite, the school has right now $164 million appropriated between ourselves and the state. They've only used $31 million so far this year for the first quarter. That's only 18.9%. It should be closer to like 25%. I think the school at this point is okay financially. I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but the first 3 months of this fiscal year, they seem to be doing fine. And as a matter of fact, they ended up fiscal year 20 with a surplus, and what they've done is they put about $750,000 into their capital reserve for capital expenditures that could arise in the future. And they also encumbered a number of purchases in fiscal year 20 that really were for fiscal year 21, just to get a jump start on the fiscal year 21 year. So I think at this point, I don't agree that we should be funding the school. I think it's a little premature, but if needed down the road, it's something that I think we could look at. And the other thing is, I think something like this should really be done in the fourth quarter anyway of the fiscal year.
Councilman Brady?
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I appreciate Council President Farina bringing this forward. I look forward to talking about this more. If this passes to go to the Finance Committee, I think it's a very serious issue. How we are here in November with schools currently going on and not exactly know what the budget is. I look forward to learning more from the school department. So I think that was a great suggestion by Councilman Stichels. But I think it's a serious issue that we definitely should be discussing. So I thank you for bringing it forward.
Any other members of the council? If not,
So like,
yes,
this is
Councilman Vargas?
Thank you. So I also want to thank Council President Farina for bringing this up to light. But kind of like what Council Member Stichels also said, right? I'm in the midst of it. I'm a mother of two who obviously both of my kids go to the public school system, and I know how important this is. I understand the necessary resources that the schools need in order to manage through this pandemic. I believe the schools were awarded approximately $2.7 million as part of the COVID-19 CARES grant. And I believe that those dollars have been itemized or spent, I would assume, for the opening of the schools, school start, whether it's custodial supplies, computer equipment, and so forth. So all four sending this to the Finance Committee. I'm not obviously on the Finance Committee, but I'm looking forward to listening to to Mr. Joe Balducci, the school department, and superintendent as well, to kind of tell us a little bit of where we are, where they are, where the spending of the grant is, and a combination of other items listed so that we can make sure that we provide our school department the proper tools in order to continue throughout the school year, assuming this pandemic doesn't, do any harm or close the schools whatsoever.
Thank you. If no one else has a comment, I'll make my comments. Since I made the motion to delete the 4.1 million from the budget, just as it was then, we didn't want to commit to a maintenance of effort issue. And since then, as Councilmember Vargas mentioned, and I think Councilman Hopkins mentioned, that some COVID money has been sent to the school department, and they've also had less expenses to a certain extent, which I think may lessen the impact of this. So to me, it's still a little premature. I mean, that was our whole premise in our unanimous decision to kind of hold off until we know exactly what's coming in. So I have no problem with taking it back in the Finance Committee. I'd really like to do it in chambers or in the Cranston East Auditorium if we're going to bring in the school department. But that's another subject for later in the meeting. But I do think that it's still a little premature, and I think that as Mr. Strom said, there's money available for them to continue the way they're going without us having to, pump some money in immediately. So I'd like to wait and see. So we have a motion and a second to continue now to the October meeting, which is the 13th, Madam Clerk?
The 15th,
The 16th, I'm sorry.
1-5.
1-5, okay. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes,
Council President Farina?
Yes.
turn the gavel back over.
Thank you. The Board of Committees, Finance Committee, Council Vice President, you have the floor.
Oh, I guess I'm back on the hot seat.
You are.
Okay. First, we had a resolution authorizing real estate tax abatements. Move to ask for approval.
I'll take a motion to approve real estate tax abatements.
Don't move.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Under discussion, Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Freeman.
Yes.
Next, we had a resolution authorizing motor vehicle tax abatements. I'd urge passage.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Under discussion, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Freeman.
Yes.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing tangible tax abatements.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
I need a motion to approve and then a second, Councilman Hopkins.
Motion approved.
Then I have a second.
Second.
And second.
Thank you.
Mike, get it together, Mike.
Yeah.
Any comments? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Freeman.
Yes.
Next, we had tax interest waiver approvals. Urge passage.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second. I have a motion and a second under discussion. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Freeman.
Yes.
Next, we have tax interest waiver denials. Urge passage.
Motion to approve the denials, please.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Under discussion. Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Freeman.
Yes.
Next, we had 8-20-01 ordinance authorizing the city to utilize Western road impact fees for the engineering for traffic improvements at two major intersections, sponsored by the mayor and co-sponsored by Councilman Brady.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Donegan, seconded by Councilmember Hopkins in reverse order. Under discussion. Councilmember Brady, would you like to go first? As you are named as a sponsor.
Mike, I'm just trying to, for whatever reason, the docket just came down. Just give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get the link. I apologize.
Take your time. You can go second. Anyone else like to make a comment on this?
Mr. President, I can explain this a little bit.
Sure, Director Perillo.
A study was conducted in 2019 for the intersections of Natick and Wilbur and Hope, Phoenix, and Wilbur. The study indicated a readily available project at the Natick and Wilbur intersection consisting of a single lane roundabout. A complete land survey has been done and plans are being prepared for potential bidding and construction available in FY22. Also, due to the tight land available in that Hope, Phoenix, and Wilbur area, they are studying the potential of land acquisition, which would allow for a single lane roundabout or possible installation of a signalized intersection. If all that came to fruition, you're talking sometime in year FY23 for construction. So that's just kind of a summary of what those fees are be spent on.
Council President, if I may.
You may.
Living in the area, obviously much like yourself, this is obviously a continued problem area. I think it's a great place to use the fees to continue to look into improving this area. So much like Director Perillo said, in committee, I was much in support of this and I will continue to be in support of this because I think it needs to be changed as quickly as we can.
Councilmember Stichels, I saw you with your hand up.
Yeah, when would this money be spent? When would it start being spent? For Director Perillo?
To the best of my knowledge, I think some of the work would be done, some of the money would be spent in 21. And then with the construction going into 22. So the money itself, just for the study, would be 21. And then work 22, 23.
Okay, I just would, I know this was in the budget and I certainly didn't object to it. The financial situation of the city, which I think is fairly perilous given the lack of action by the state and the federal government, that it might be, this might not be the top priority spending project for roads in Western Cranston. I'd offer that as a thought.
Council President, if I may.
You may, Councilmember Brady.
Councilman Stichels, I certainly agree with your sentiment. I brought that up when we were voting on a splash pad. I wasn't sure that those fees should be going to that at the time, but this being a couple of years out, and being an important issue in my ward, I don't want to see it go unnoticed. But I do get your sentiment. Continue to obviously have the CEO look at our city finances, but I do know it's an area that my residents will be mad if I didn't push for it to be fixed.
Council Vice President.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, I'm just wondering, would this be, because it's a road impact fee, would it be usable for anything else but that? I know we've earmarked certain things and you can't just pull them back. So I would, through to the administration, through the chair, just wondering if this is one of those items.
Bob, can you comment on that? Bob Strom?
Well, we have impact money that's designated for Western roads we have a sizable amount of money that can be used for this. It's not really restricted for any specific type of thing, but if it's pertaining to roads or the implementation of a roundabout or whatever is for safety also, it meets the criteria. So right now, I believe it was $100,000 in the ordinance. We have currently about $250,000 in that fund. So we have the funds to do this type of work.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stichels.
Just to answer Mike Favicchio's question, or give him a little money from this fund. The last time we used it, you probably remember, was to repave Lippert Avenue. So that was another use, and that's what made me think that, gee, maybe they're, if we're short on money, other things might want to come first. I don't know if there are other things that come first. I just think it should be considered.
Well, I think that, I know the area is a little bit problematic for traffic, and it's going to take a few years. So this is kind of a small amount actually to get it started. Maybe they can see what has to happen next year. But anyway, I think I'm going to support it anyway.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Farino?
Yes.
And lastly, we had a resolution loan order authorizing the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds of the city of Cranston, sponsored by Mayor Fung, co-sponsored by council members Hopkins, Brady, Paplaskas, Favicchio. This is for refinancing at a lower rate. Urge passage.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Have a second.
Second.
Under discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes,
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes,
Council President Farina?
Yes.
that's all we
Moving
had.
on, we have the Ordinance Committee. Council Vice President, you are still on the dock.
5-20-04, ordinance and amendment of Chapter 17, Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Zoning Special Use Permit, sponsored by Mayor Fung. This was heard, and I'd urge motion to approve at this point.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Councilmember Hopkins. Under discussion. Who would like to go first? Councilmember Stichels.
I'd like to offer the amendment that was explained by Doug Doe. Does the clerk have all the wording of that? Or do I need to read it?
Madam Clerk, if you could, for the record, just read it in.
Sure. As the comprehensive plan lists goals and policies to identify and protect scenic roads in Western Cranston, dimensional variances may not be granted to properties requiring special permits adjacent to streets listed in City Ordinance 17.20.090L and streets that are part of the historic farm route and Pippin Orchard Road north of Situate Avenue until such scenic roads are identified and protected. Properties along scenic roads shall not be eligible for dimensional variances under special permits.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have that in the form of a motion to amend the current ordinance. Do I have a second? No second?
No second?
No second, Steve.
I'll second for discussion.
I have a second for discussion. Under discussion.
Council President,
Yes.
could we have a clarification of where this amendment's going on the ordinance?
Councilmember Stichels?
I believe it would be inserted on line 78. That's what Mr. Goh said in his letter. Yeah, it would be on line 78, and it would bump all the other lines. Yeah, there's no changes there. Yeah, we'll just go with the, after the section that's proposed by the, by Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
Council Vice President.
Yeah, through the chair to, I don't know if Director Pizzulo was on or the Director of Administration, but I'm not sure what the, what the impact of this amendment is, other than to just basically ban, looks like it's banning this type of action in the rural sections of the city.
Director Pizzulo's on, so the chair to Director Pizzulo.
Mr. Chairman, I had no knowledge of this amendment prior to this meeting. It was brought to my attention about 6:30 tonight. I don't really have very much to say on it, other than that this would take a lot of time and energy to research this and vet this through legal to make sure that we're not causing more problems for the city.
Councilmember Stichels.
Yeah, I mean, what it says, Mike, is there are specific in the code of ordinances, there are specific setbacks for rural roads and that are greater than the setbacks elsewhere in order to preserve the rural quality of Western Cranston. So this would bar getting a dimensional variance on those roads that are listed here, the farm route, and well, you can read the ones that are listed. So as it relates to, I know we've talked about a pending ground-mounted solar project at the Cranston Country Club. What it would relate there is it would not bar them from having one. It would prevent them from having one in that setback. So it would prevent them from having one in 60-foot setback on Burlington Road. You could have one somewhere else if they got a special use permit. That's the intention of the ordinance, is to preserve the rural quality of these roads, and which, as Doug Doe mentioned, is a very strong part of the comprehensive plan. So I would also have questions if this amendment did not pass, if it would be could be viewed as a change in the comprehensive plan if the zoning board granted a dimensional variance in any case on those roads. So I think that ought to be researched. That should be legally researched. And regardless, I don't think it's good policy to write a provision like this that's going to destroy potentially destroy the rural quality of Western Cranston, which is really a valuable asset to the city, and we should protect it rather than assault it through solar projects and inappropriate development.
Vice President.
Yeah, the only concern, I think, that isn't this a mutually exclusive issue? I mean, this was just a process issue from what I recall, that it was where you could do the dimensional and the special use permit at the same time. It didn't mean that you automatically granted it. It just meant that it could be done at the same time to avoid any real problems. So couldn't that other amendment be made or be brought up in a different area? Because it sounds like you're saying that, Steve, that they may not be able to do it in that area based on other portions, provisions in our law, in our ordinances.
Well, I guess, again, I'm repeating the thoughts of Doug Doe, but what it's attempting to say is that there is some value in doing those two things at the same time, the special use permit and the dimensional variance, but that should not be allowed in the case of the setbacks on these certain roads. So it's a yes to the process, but not in this instance. The process would not be allowed in that. The merged process would not be allowed in that case.
But shouldn't that be in a different section, in a different area? This is just the process. As far as whether or not it's allowed in that particular area, would that be part of another section of the ordinances?
I don't think so. I think it's, you can do this process in the following cases, and you can't do it in these other cases.
Okay, Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, President. I'd like to hear some more from Mr. Pizzullo on this. You seem to have some concerns, both legal and otherwise, in terms of this amendment. Can you give us some more of your input into this?
Well, Councilman Hopkins, this amendment, I haven't had a chance to not only read it, haven't had a chance to even digest what we're actually talking about. One of my first thoughts is that it's kind of irregular for the council to come up with an ordinance and then say that the zoning board cannot rule on variances from said ordinance. That's, I'm not sure that we can't do that, but it's kind of irregular. So we have to look at that. And yeah, I would echo Councilman Favicchio's point that this is almost a different ordinance. And we're talking about the dimensional and the special use now for 3 months. And now this is brought out, and it's a very different type of ordinance that really only has to do with one sliver of one special use in one part of the city. This is the ordinance that's on the table now affects applications throughout the city for special use that might also need dimensional variance, as we've described before. The idea of the scenic roadways is really not, for one particular application, it's yes, I can see the linkage, but to put it into this ordinance seems irregular.
So would you recommend then to delay this for further study?
No, I wouldn't. I think the ordinance that's on the table tonight, unamended, is ready to be considered tonight. The idea with the scenic roadways is really a separate ordinance, and I think it should be presented as such.
Thank you.
Councilor Paplaskas.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. I'm going to be voting against this amendment tonight, just to carve out one section of the city. When dimensional variances are allowed in 30 other cities and towns, and this would allow it across our whole city for people to apply to it. There'd still be public hearings on anybody that applies for a dimensional variance. It goes to the zoning board. So I will be voting against this amendment. Thank you.
What else? Hearing none.
Well, I have a question.
Oh, Councilor Stegos.
Yeah, I just have a question for the planning director. When this first came up, we were told by you that there had been a part-time employee of the planning department who had gone through the code of ordinances and had highlighted this as a problem, as something that needed to be solved, because there had been a court case, I believe, 18 or 19 years ago on this issue. And then that was the first time it came up. And then in the second time it came up, you stated that this was not a recommendation of the planning department, that it was the planning department supported it, but it was not initiated by the planning department. And I'm kind of wondering, there seems to be a contradiction there.
There's no contradiction there whatsoever, Councilman. We've talked about this in August. Drew Flarmer, who is the associate planner, he was tasked with reviewing the zoning code. It was flagged by the office. It wasn't about a court case from 20 years ago. It was flagged because it was something that was still in our code in 2020 that didn't really make any sense, and there's no really value added to it. It was flagged at that time. The ordinance that's before us tonight for a vote was not sponsored by the planning department. We did not write the ordinance. However, the ordinance as submitted, we support, because we had already identified the need to remove this language from the zoning code and amend this to be consistent with all the other cities and towns of scale that are doing development in this manner. It's a relic, it's a problem, and that's why we supported it. And tonight we came to you with a second recommendation that was requested by the city council, and we've prepared that report if you'd like to talk about that. But this other stuff that was discussed in August, I don't think there's been any contradiction whatsoever. So, if we'd like to talk about the ordinance that's on the table, we're here at your disposal.
Director Mazzullo? If it was not written by the planning department, who wrote it?
It was Bob Murray.
Thank you. Any other questions on the amendment? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll on the amendment.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
No.
Councilmember Vargas?
No.
Councilmember Jermaine?
No.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
No.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
No.
Council Vice President Vecchio?
No.
Council President Farina?
No. Any further discussion on the original ordinance? Back to the original ordinance. Feel free to discuss at your leisure.
Council President,
Yes.
I'll just add something similar to what I said, I think, when this was before us the last time. I don't pretend to be an expert on all of these things. I think that it's incumbent on us to, at least for me, not representing this ward or, my constituency, not particularly being impacted by this piece of legislation, that the people that would be impacted by this have all resoundingly been opposed to this. And so for that, I'm going to be voting against it tonight. Additionally, I do think, I'll leave it at that. I'm going to be voting against it.
Any further comments?
Yes, Mr. Council President, am I may?
Yes, Councilman Vargas.
I just want to get some clarification as it stands right now. The proposed language before us, pretty much if this was to say move forward and pass, say today, at that point, then the zoning board would then decide if they could give a dimensional variance and also decide if they can give a special use permit, correct?
Correct.
I'm just trying to, okay. So my whole concern is the members of the zoning board are appointed by the city council members, I believe. And I'm not sure, and I'm still learning as I go. But I believe maybe the mayor has an appointment or two or so as well that they could appoint on there. And so as council members, we have to make sure that when we also appoint members to the zoning board, that we are appointing members to the board of whom we believe has obviously the best interest for the city, that has the background, and that we trust to make sure that if a decision such as special use permit or dimensional variance is given, that we can allow them to also make that important decision for us. Yes, we are an elected body, but it's also, as elected body, we are appointing members to the zoning board of review, of which, as a matter of fact, I think we have one coming up this evening or two. So it's not this, it seems like this this amendment or just this language is more so impacting, and I could be totally wrong, more so of the western side of Cranston. Councilman Brady, you're on the call. I didn't know what your, not to put you on the spot, but what your thoughts are on this, given the fact that it's also your ward that you're representing. Because the way I'm leaning towards right now is that if we're able to decide on who serves and we're voting on election of city officials to serve on boards in the zoning board are appointments of the city council members of the city council, then we're obviously making sure that we put there the most qualified folks, individuals that are the best interest for the city, and that we can trust their decision as to whether or not to provide special use permit and dimensional variances. So I don't know, Councilman Brady, if I may, through the chair, just to get a sense of, because I feel like this could impact that area a little bit more than our area and the eastern side. Not to say that it's 100% on the western side, but just because it's more of a rural area than ours, than mine is.
Sure. Council President, do you mind if I respond? Councilwoman Vargas, thank you for bringing up that important question. Obviously, tonight is my first potential appointments, just like yourself. I was planning on speaking on that later. I think it's very important for us to have a role in on who's on those boards. I think it's important, especially with such an inexperienced council that we're about to have, to surround ourselves with some people with experience. Obviously, it's just myself, you, John, and Chris returning. These boards, I'd love the opportunity to learn more about as somewhat of a rookie council person. For the most part, I haven't had much say in those appointments thus far. So it's crucially important that we continue to, educate ourselves on these boards and educate ourselves on how these processes work. For this particular amendment tonight, obviously we took the time, we went out to the site, we saw it. I've spoke to all the residents, I went door to door. So for this particular amendment, I haven't had any opposition with the exception of Mr. Doe, who I think has been very passionate about our ward, and I've taken a lot of his input, and obviously we've collectively done a moratorium and fought for the residents of Ward 4. In this particular case, this is probably the first time I've disagreed with Mr. Doe. So, as far as your direct question about, how these boards matter, I listened to you on the phone, and I'm going to listen to you more further on in this conversation, and we'll likely see how the support goes, obviously.
Thank you, Councilman Brady. I didn't know whether or not you received any phone calls more so against or in favor of this proposal, just because of the rural area that you're in. That's what I'm at.
Yeah, no, I knocked door to door. The 4 direct residents right there welcomed it. I did not speak to the actual resident right on the country club, but the 4 direct residents across the street within that cul-de-sac, 3 out of 4 were home, and I spoke to them directly.
Okay, thank you.
Else? I'll add my 2 cents on this. I can remember 2014 like it was yesterday, when the planning director came in, Peter Lapola, and told us that we needed to change our solar code to match the state, and it wasn't really a big deal, and it didn't matter much, and it wouldn't change the rural character of Western Cranston, and everything would be great, and we'd be for green energy, right, Mike? And I said, yes, I am, and green energy is important. And we had solar proliferation in Western Cranston, and 2 people came forward at the time and said this is wrong, and that was Councilmember Steve Stikos and the head of the West Bay Land Trust, who at the time was on the Conservation Commission, Douglas Doe. And I listened to the administration and Director Lapola at the time, and I voted for a solar change that we had to basically, as council president, I had to pass a moratorium and undo the work that the council did because it was wrong. I will not let that happen again. I personally have received more than 5 complaints about this potential issue from neighboring residents. The spot zoning aspect of it, allowing someone to build a workaround after we did everything to change the solar code. The fact that this was written by the attorney who is representing Cranston Country Club to get the zoning variance bothers me. So for me, I'm going to be against this change, and I would urge every member of this council to think long and hard before they vote. This happened once before, and we ended up with 8 solar farms in Western Cranston, and everyone said we wouldn't. So on history, I'm going to deflect to Councilmember Steve Stikos and Doug Doe this time. People who told me in 2014 I was wrong and I should have voted that way, I'm going to listen to them tonight. Vote no. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
No.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Sorry about that. Geez. Sorry, this is just not an easy decision for me about as much as I've digested and read through every word forward. I'm going to abstain from this one.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Abstain.
Councilmember Donegan?
No.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Farino?
No. Passes 4-3 with 2 abstentions. Oh, yeah.
Council President,
You're right, Steve. You can go.
the requirement that 5 votes are necessary to pass anything.
You're 100% right, Steve. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot. We have 9 full members. 5 are required for passage. Motion fails. Moving on with the work of the evening. Ordinance Committee, you're still up. Council Vice President.
Okay. 7-20-03, ordinance amendment of chapter 17, Code of the City of Cranston, entitled Zoning Citizens Guide to Land Development Process, sponsored by council members Hopkins and Paplaskas. I'd urge approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Under discussion? Councilmember Paplaskas.
Thank you. I promise to be brief. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I promise to be brief. This came from fruition from work that the Charter Review Commission did. Instead of putting this in the charter, it was just quicker for us to do it by ordinance, and it seems like a better fit. So I urge passage and thank my colleagues in advance. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
You're on mute, Chris.
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Farino?
Yes. Moving on, we have public hearings. This is open to any matter. 2 hand raises. Sheila, since you spoke for the first time, unmute. You can go first.
Thank you, Council President Farina. My name is Sheila Ressiger. I have lived at 50 Malvern Avenue in Cranston for 40 years. At last month's City Council meeting on August 24th, 7 members of 5G Free Rhode Island gave presentations detailing our objections to the rollout of so-called small cell 5G antennas in Cranston and across Rhode Island. I would like to know if there has been any follow-up investigation or even discussion among the City Council members and/or the city solicitors about the materials that we presented, both during the public comment section and in writing. We provided information regarding the harmful physiological, neurological, and other health effects of this pulsed data modulated microwave radio frequency radiation. Information regarding the potential for the lowering of property values and thus property taxes, and also about potential fiscal liability the city might incur from class action lawsuits. Wireless companies inform their shareholders that they might experience significant losses due to class action lawsuits and that they are unable to get insurance because the insurance companies understand the risk and will not insure them. But they do not warn the consumers of their products or municipal officials about this vital information. We assert that these are serious matters that affect every resident of Cranston, as well as our precious environment, and we expect our public officials to acknowledge that there has been enough evidence presented to at least warrant a follow-up. I would also like to make a statement about certain errors and omissions in the public minutes of this August 24th council meeting. In the first place, the group is called 5G Free Rhode Island, and it was written in the minutes as 5G Rhode Island. So without the word free, no one who hadn't been at the meeting would realize that we are objecting to the installation of the 5G small cell antennas. Ms. Kendra Morales testified against 5G after CC Doucette, and she was omitted. Claire Stadtmuller's last name was misspelled. I also testified in addition to introducing the group members, and I asked that the Cranston City Council be the first town in Rhode Island to propose a resolution in support of a statewide moratorium on small wireless telecommunications facilities. I realize that the minutes are a summary and not a verbatim transcription, but I think that the minutes should reflect the main point of our presentations, that we want a 5G free Rhode Island. I would just like to make sure that these issues are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. 401-787-1958. Mute yourself. Name and address for the record. They don't see that they have their hand up. All right, I'm going to assume that's a hand up in error. Anyone else to speak during public comment? Once, twice.
Council President, I had a resident that wanted to speak, Mr. Paolino. I don't know if he's having trouble or he tried to speak earlier. Did he email you, Ms. Cirillo, or call you?
I've been emailing him. I believe he's a panelist now and should be able to speak if he wants to do so.
Okay, what was his name, Ed?
Mr. Paolino.
Paolino. He was on before. Still, I see him there.
Yeah, he was having trouble, I think, allowing us to hear him. He's not muted.
Nope, he's not muted, so if he speaks, we should hear him.
Yeah.
Seems that the issue might be on his end, council member. If he can get up and running, we'll let him bounce in later in the meeting because I don't think anybody will object to a resident talking who just is having a technology issue. We'll go on to election of city officials. We have 3 appointments with Zoning Board of Review. We have an appointment of Carlos Zamorano as Ward 1 member by Council Member Vargas. Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second under discussion. Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Does this, I'm sorry, can we have a discussion or are we?
If you'd like, I was going to take the roll, and I assumed everybody would vote yes. It's your appointment. Usually with the
Okay.
ward appointments, we have the resumes. If anyone has any questions based on the information they received, now would be the time to ask.
All right.
Well, there's
If I
two
can allow-
appointments. Council President, there's 2 appointments for this particular seat. That's maybe why the discussion is requested.
There is, so I've asked the ward council person to get preferential treatment to go first. So we'll hear hers. If hers fails, then yours gets to go.
Thank you, Mr. Council
Unless
President.
no one makes a motion to
So-
approve in a second on this candidate. So we'll have to have a motion to approve in a second on Carlos Zambrano.
I made the motion.
You
to
did make the
approve.
motion to approve, and did someone second it?
I second.
Yes.
So I got a motion to approve in a second on the first candidate. Under discussion, Councilmember Vargas.
Thank you. So the zoning board of review, for those who are not aware, or city residents that are on the call, it has appointments by the city council members. The member that was on there, which was a Ward 1 member, moved out of the city. And so there is a vacancy to fulfill the unexpired term of that person who is currently serving on the zoning board. The city council can nominate someone to serve on the zoning board of review. In this case, I've moved forward to nominate for the approval and vote of the passage of the council members for Mr. Zambrano, who's been a member of Ward 1 community for an extremely very long time, he and his family. He brings a diverse perspective, a background of inspection and real estate as well. And I believe his resume was also shared with the city council members. He would be an asset to the zoning board to again fulfill the vacancy in the unexpired term. I believe it was member number 5 who, again, I mentioned moved out of the city. The boards and commission in the city, I think it is no secret to any one of us or any type of news to us, the fact that our boards and commission need to be diversified in our city. And so one of the things that I've committed to the Ward 1 constituency has been to make sure that in any place or point that I can reflect diversity and be able to appoint someone, I'd definitely do it in this case with boards and commission. Those, you see the members of the council, you know how passionate I also am about the boards and commission. I believe this past year, during this term, we also passed to make sure that all the boards and commissions listings were updated and that would be posted on our new website. Council member Donegan had recently mentioned earlier during the call that One Cranston did a survey where some of the members of the council had submitted their information, and it was very enlightening indeed. And I want to make sure that those who submitted, or anyone who's read it, or anyone who's posted, whether it's social media or anywhere along those lines, that diversity matters and we want to make sure it's inclusive, that the gaps, we need to address the gaps in the representation that are by targeting and outreaching, not just people of color, but also women, and promoting civic participation and making sure that we have representations from different perspectives and communities, as we have here before us this evening. We have, I believe, there is a member of Ward 4 who served on the zoning board of review and had just recently moved over to Ward 1, which, for the record, I called and welcomed the member to Edgewood, to the eastern side of Cranston. But I also want to make sure that we continue, and it's a good problem to have when you have more than one person wanting to serve on a board or commission, because we want to make sure, like I said, that we have civic engagement. But I also want to make sure that if we can diversify our boards and commission, particularly with this appointment, where the geographical residency, according to this vacancy, is that the person must live in Ward 1 and 2, of which two of the names that are being nominated for this position, both are Ward 1, but in this case, Mr. Zambrano brings not only not only a diverse perspective, but a diverse background, and he's Latino, and I think that he is also qualified to be serving on the Zoning Board of Review, as we all just had recently a conversation how the Zoning Board of Review is one of the top important boards in our city. Not to degrade any other board or commission in our city, but it's definitely up there in terms of decisions for the city. And so Mr. Zambrano has that background. And when one of the things that I wanted to say too is that there's been many names that have come before us of appointments. And when a council member, particularly who lives in that area, has submitted a name, I truly respect that. And I truly value the judgment of that other council person to make sure that they're putting or nominating a name of which they think the person is qualified, not to say that the other person that is going to be, who's come before us as well, for I guess for a discussion or vote to be on there, person is also qualified. But as a Ward 1 council member, I would like to see some diversity in our Zoning Board of Review, as well as many other boards and commissions throughout the city. And I received a listing from Leanne with an updated listing of vacancies that we have of boards and commission, and I highly encourage many of you to take a look at it as well and fill those in. It is, it's how can I say it? This is a person who's qualified and a person who has a background, who's Latino, that we can actually make sure that we say we are diversifying our boards and commission as a start. And so I shouldn't even say the word qualified, because but is the matter of the point is that I hope that I can count on your support from you, from all of you on the council, in supporting Carlos Zambrano to be serving under the unexpired term for the Zoning Board of Review. I'm not sure if any of you had the opportunity to take a look at his resume, but I believe Leanne shared that with everyone. And I hope I can count on your support as a Ward 1 council member to make sure that we diversify our boards and commission as we move forward. And my hope is that if we may still have actually a vacancy as an alternate, that we can fill that in as well, whether or not the person who's currently serving would like to serve on there. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from being on a board or commission because because of the color of their skin or so. I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to serve on a board. But if I have the opportunity to make sure that we can diversify it, I need to make sure that you guys know that I will make sure that we diversify a board in commission as a start. So that's all I gotta say. Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Vargas. I see Donegan and I see Councilman Donegan and Councilman Hopkins. I'll get to you guys in a second, but before I do, since we do have two people going for the same seat, it is germane to discuss why the other person might be better for the seat at this time, because they both are going for the same specific seat. I know sometimes we talk about things being germane, but since this is the same seat, if you wanted to make a pitch for the other candidate, you can, even though this one is before us. Councilor Donegan?
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm going to be supporting the appointment of Carlos Zambrano this evening, and it's in no way a reflection of you, Mr. Barberi. Obviously, I've known you and you've known my family for a very long time, and I appreciate everything that you do for the city. I do feel, though, that at the end of the day, it's an appointment for Ward 1, and Councilwoman Vargas being the elected official out of Ward 1. If it hits the fan and something important is before the zoning board of review, I think it's Councilwoman Vargas should have the person in that position that she trusts the most, and that's not a slight at you in any way whatsoever. So I hope there's a way we can get you on, keep you on the board as an alternative or whatnot. And I appreciate again everything that you do for the city. I am going to be supporting Carlos Zambrano this evening.
Councilmember Hopkins.
Thank you, President. Lamas, you know how much I care about your concerns on this, but I want to bring up the other point. First of all, you're not the only one that represents Ward 1. We have 3 citywide candidates that also represent Ward 1 as well and have just as much of an influence on those selections as well in terms of dealing with the problems and issues. I just spent the entire week working on issues down in Stillhouse Cove, and I've spent much of my time on the council working on issues in Ward 1. So even though you represent that area, I feel I have just as much of a concern about things that happen in that area. And again, looking at diversity, we have a couple of women that are already on the zoning board. And I don't know Mr. Zambrano, but what I did look at on both of their resumes was experience. And I think that has to count. And you mentioned that it was a board that was extremely important to the city. And I just don't understand why we would take somebody like Mr. Barberi, who has loads of experience having worked on this committee, and not put him at the top of the list. So in this particular instance, as much as I will continue to support diversity throughout our city, I think experience is just as much, if not more important in this selection.
Councilmember Brady.
Thank you, Council President. Echoing what Councilman Hopkins said, I would have to agree. I think diversity should continue to be in the forefront of all of our conversations. And I think Councilwoman Vargas has done a tremendous job making sure that it is. And, this is nothing against Mr. Zambrano. I think he has a great resume. And I hope whoever is appointed tonight, the other one will remain as an alternate, and we can continue to educate whoever that may be and keep them involved in the city, because as we all know, it's very difficult to get people involved on these boards and commissions. And that being said, the person that I suggested tonight has an attendance record that has been great. He's never missed a meeting from my understanding. He's very passionate about it. He's taken the effort to call me on numerous occasions now throughout this process and continue to show to me that he's passionate and wants to remain in that seat. I did live in Ward 1, certainly not the Ward 1 representative. 99% of the time I've told Councilwoman Vargas that I will resort to her opinion, and I will resort to her, what she wants to do for that ward, as she is the representative of that ward. We're all passionate about Cranston, and I just don't want to see someone with experience lose interest in city government or city boards. So in this particular case, I'm hoping that they both can eventually serve, but I'm going to stick by my guns and go with experience here.
Anyone else? Councilmember Stichels.
Yeah, we need to look at the way that this ordinance was written. And it was written so that there would be a geographic diversity on the zoning board. And to have one council member on the same meeting proposing 2 members of the zoning board is just from 2 different wards is just not appropriate. There's a strong feeling, as I'm sure anyone who has campaigned for office on the eastern side of the city knows, that the western side of the city controls things and gets all the goodies. And this kind of thing reinforces that, I think at times unfair perception. So I'm supporting Mr. Zambrano. I think it has to be somebody who lives in Ward 1 or Ward 2. That's exactly what the requirement is, not somebody who moved in a couple of months ago. I mean, that's just frankly wrong. And if somebody from Ward 1 moved into Ward 4, and I was proposing, or Councilwoman Vargas was proposing, that person bump out Mr. Barberi, that would be seen as completely inappropriate. So let's look at what this is intended to do. It's to spread the authority of the zoning board out geographically in the city. And I think when we talk about diversity, we can't keep going to the same people for these appointments. Mr. Barberi is a very qualified. I've worked with him when he was the principal at Bain and at Cranston West, but he has a position of authority in this community. He is a principal of one of the 2 high schools, and from everything I hear, does a very good job at that. But we need to spread things out and get other people involved, and particularly people of different ethnic groups and backgrounds. So I really hope that people will put geography aside and vote for Mr. Zambrano, who Ms. Vargas, I think she's found a really qualified candidate, and we ought to recognize that and give him a chance to be part of the decision-making process in Cranston.
Council Vice President Vecchio, you'll turn your video on.
I did. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think it matters. I mean, whether you've been there 3 months or 3 years, if you choose to live in one part of the city, you're eligible to vote in that part of the city, as long as you're registered in time. And, you know, we've had people move around the city that are on boards and commissions. They don't have the restrictions that we do. I don't think there's any restriction on where you live or whether the appointments come just from that ward. I don't recall actually, but I think the principal issue here is experience. I think we need to, especially since it's a quasi judicial type of board. I mean, they have autonomy. We can't dictate to the zoning board what they do and their decision making. So they are very autonomous, and it is a difficult job, and you need experience does matter. And I've always supported diversity on the committees. Councilman Stichels and I did agree on that. I think in our very first session, we both thought that there should be more women and more minorities on many of the commissions. So I mean, I don't have a problem with trying to diversify. I just think that the experience factor is important. And if you look at, we have a third person on the list tonight who's actually a civil engineer, which is impressive. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I think we need to look at experience.
Council President.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Papalauskas first because he hasn't spoken yet. Then I'll come back to you, Councilmember Donegan.
You are Council President. This is a tough vote. This is a really tough one. I know Mr. Barberi has done a great job on the zoning board. I know he shows up to meetings. He's very thorough and has represented the city well. And I also respect Councilmember Vargas's pick, and that person's very qualified too to do this. But I also don't like to just take that knowledge base and that institutional knowledge and put them, you know, or not elect them. I know that he represented Ward 4 or that area, the western side of the city, but he moved to Ward 1, and I don't think he would ever have, he'd have the best interest of Ward 1 at heart and Ward 2 if he was to serve. So this is a tough one for me. I certainly understand all your points, Councilmember Vargas, and I just don't like to just somebody who's willing to serve, someone who has served and served with honor and dignity. It's tough to just not vote for them again. So thank you.
Councilmember Donovan.
Yeah, I'm just going to add this, Mr. Zambrano's experience. And to be completely honest, I've never met Mr. Zambrano, but his resume, U.S. Air Force Reserves, an MBA, home inspector, realtor. That all sounds like pretty pertinent experience for the Zoning Board of Review. And I'm just going to reiterate this. When it comes to these things and there are appointments by ward and you're the elected ward person, you want the person serving on that commission that's representing your ward that you know is going to have the best interest, that you have a relationship with, you can trust, you can have those conversations with, and that you know them. I think that helps give security to knowing that person is there with the best interest of the ward. And this is, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that Mr. Barberi would not have the best interest of the ward, but I wouldn't go, and I have a tremendous amount of respect and consider all of you friends, but I would not go if there's an appointment to be made for Ward 4 or Ward 5 or Ward 6. I wouldn't start go and finding nominees to appoint to those positions. I would trust your judgment that the person you've selected is the person you want representing your ward. And I think that Councilwoman Vargas has made it clear that this is the person she wants representing her ward. And I think that we kind of have precedent to support that. And I think when we have two very comparable candidates, I would go with the person that the ward candidate wants.
May I?
You may, Councilmember Jermaine.
Thank you. While I'm new to the process, but I would like to know what was the precedent in proposing someone to the board. Is there any rules? How do we follow those rules in proposing someone? So I would like to know that, and whether I appreciate, I know Mr. Barberi, but I don't. I met with him. I know he's really qualified, but I'm a little concerned about what will be set up as a precedent in going over the choice of the ward elected.
Thank you. So I can go through that. So Mr. Barberi ended up moving from Ward 4 to Ward 1. In doing so, resigned his seat that was associated with Ward 4. At the same time, the Ward 1 representative chose not to continue serving as a member of the zoning board. So it created a vacancy in the ward that Mr. Barberi was moving to. So he requested the council that he be allowed to continue to serve in the seat that was vacated. I believe he sent the email to several members of the council, and I think Mr. Andrew Brady just was the one that happened to submit it. So we have a case here that is not a typical case of an opening in a ward where you had someone resign and then the council person submitted a name. This is a very different kind of case where you had someone that resigned because they moved or was in the process of resigning because they moved, and the person in the area they were moving to also resigned. So he made the request that he continue serving on the board, which he has done so for the last, I think, 3 years without issue. I think he's attended almost every meeting. So the request made sense that he be continued to allowed to serve on that board. In that time, Councilmember Vargas found someone from Ward 1 and submitted that name as well. So now we have 2 people before us requesting to be appointed to that seat.
Council President, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. You know, again, just for the record purpose as well, I am not whatsoever degrading the experience or so of Mr. Barberi. As mentioned, I thank him for his his service in education as well, and his time on the zoning board of review. But I had a conversation with him, and I had a conversation with Councilman Brady as well. And I also did say, there's also a opening position as an alternate, and whether or not he would consider it, seems like he'd rather not serve on the as an alternate member, but continue to serve as an active member. But I also forwarded him the listing as well, as I would with anybody that that the listing that the clerk forwarded over to me, so we know what vacancies there are, if there was any other boards or commissions that are of interest. Like I said, I guess it's a good problem to have when you have more than one person who's interested in continuing to serve on a board. But at the same time, I have given my word that I was going to make sure that we diversified our boards and commissions. So when the email was sent to me back in maybe July or so that Mr. Gendron was moving out of the city, I had, already started, thinking of a couple of potential names who would potentially be able to serve on it. And, Mr. Zambrano came to mind, and just because he's been living in the ward, he's for quite some time. And, although Mr. Barberi has been serving on the board for maybe, I think maybe this is his first or second term. I'm not too sure, to be quite honest with you, but I did offer having him serve as an alternate. So just for the record on that. But and again, no disrespect to Mr. Barberi. We welcome everyone to Edgewood or Ward 1 with open arms. And to Councilman Hopkins' point, I agree with you, right? We have 3 council members and we have the Ward 1, and you represent the entire city. But on my end too is you look out for everyone in the city. My best interest is also to look out for everyone in the city of Cranston. When I take a vote, it's not just impacting my side, it's impacting our entire city. But as a Ward 1 resident, I need to make sure that, just like many other council members on here that are representing their respective wards, they vote or listen based on whether it's email, calls that they're having with their constituency. And so as a Ward 1 council member, I've been hearing, let's diversify our boards and commission. Well, here is an opportunity. I'm not going to bring back quotes from each and every one of you, because I don't, honestly, I would be paraphrasing when you're talking about diversity. Enough is enough. Everybody wants diversity, but when push comes to shove, no one's voting for diversity at all right now. So I want to see the city change and continue to move forward in a positive way where we're inclusive. We just had a survey that was presented to us by One Cranston that said there's so many people in our city that don't even feel welcomed at all. And so, again, this is a perfect way to make sure that we have representation from our community on a board. And so I'm going to make sure that we were just talking about we just put in on a resolution, recognizing National Hispanic Heritage Month, where many of you, or if not all of us, were listed as co-sponsor. Just voted on a resolution of the city council declaring racism as a public health issue. Again, affecting African Americans, Latinos. Here is the opportunity for all of you to make sure that we do have representation in a zoning board of review, that we do have representation, whether it's in the juvenile hearing board, that we do have representation, whether it's in, say, CDBG, vacancy board, that we do have representation, whether it's on other boards, whether it's personal peer boards, Park and Recreation Advisory Committee, the Conservation Commission. We have all these boards and commissions, but enough is enough. Let's just not talk the talk. We have a lot of us have been on the record again, just saying, I'm willing to listen to the community. I'm willing to make sure that, that I'm here to bring people to the table from all backgrounds while listening and objectively learning from all conversations. Councilman Brady, you mentioned this in your One Cranston survey. And here is a zoning board of review appointment to diversify our boards and commission. And it's not just to diversify it, but it's to understand and know that he has a professional background, that he is qualified. It's not just I'm putting someone, oh yeah, because it's a person of color, we're gonna diversify it. It's making sure that we have a person of color that's also qualified, and he's more than qualified. And so when I door knock, and when I got elected, they said, let's make sure we diversify not just our boards and commission, but obviously the entire city hall. I can't obviously just walk in and change city hall and make sure that it reflects the demographics of our city, but I can try. And I can definitely try with the boards and commission. And so as a woman of color, as a Latina, as the first woman of color to be elected to the City of Cranston City Council, let me remind you that if I have to, because it was a long time coming. It's a shame that we can't even go ahead and expand in our horizon and make sure that we bring people of color to represent a zoning board of review, to represent and be on the board and commission representing our city of Cranston. It is 2020. We're still fighting this fight? Are you kidding me? This is why where we are. This is why where we are today. I urge passage, and I hope to have the support of each and every one of you for Mr. Carlos Zambrano to serve on the Zoning Board of Review and fulfill the unexpired vacancy of Mr. Matthew Gendry. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Council Vice President?
Yes, Council President, just one comment. Both Councilman Donegan and Councilman Stichels at one point defeated African-American candidates in their races for the council. So, I mean, they didn't just give up because if they really wanted to step aside, they could have. But they ran a normal race for a council seat, and they won. So, I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with Mr. Barberi. I don't think there's anything wrong with Mr. Zambrano. My preference has always been to start people in an alternate capacity so that they can learn the ropes, because there are some serious decisions on the zoning board. But I know it's a tough one because we have two qualified people, one that's served 3 years and one that hasn't served yet, and that's the dilemma we face. So anyway, just throw that in there, just because it is something that happened, and we've had candidates on our side that have been African American. We have one now. We've tried to do that every election cycle, and so
All right, let's not start counting how many people who we have, whether you're of color or not, running for office. The point here is to diversify our boards and commission. With all due respect, Vice Council President Favicchio, it's not about checking off the checkbox, right? This is about making sure, as you mentioned, diversifying and making sure that we have the opportunity to diversify our boards and commission. And this is the time to do it. And so again, I respectfully ask for you to, and not you in general, Mr. Favicchio, but the entire council, to look beyond and look at your platforms as your door knocking and what you've committed to, and make sure that we're appointing people on there. There's been people who've been appointed to boards and commission as a newbie, and they didn't start off as alternates. They came in just as right into that vacancy. So to me, to come in and say, well, this is a person who has experience, this person that has many. Think about it when you went into your first job and you had the opportunity to go and learn about your job and where you are today. Someone gave you the opportunity. Well, let's give this gentleman the opportunity as well, and many others to come.
May I?
Council
Brady,
President,
Councilor
Council
Brady.
President, if I may.
You may.
Well, first off, I truly appreciate Councilwoman Vargas and her passion on this topic. I don't think I don't necessarily think it's fair to Mr. Barbieri to say that if we vote for him, it's a racist vote, or it's not voting for Mrs. Zambrano. She's incredibly passionate. It was my understanding this was not a Ward 1 appointment. This was a council appointment, and we could have this discussion, and I appreciate the discussion. Tom, I still think has the experience, and I'm passionate about it, and I think we need the experience, and I don't think there should be much council interference. From when I started, I wasn't even sure I was able to speak to that board, because I know that eventually some of the stuff comes to us and there couldn't be interference. So ethically, I wasn't even sure what that had. But her passion and the way that she speaks on this, I think she makes some good points. I think I'm going to speak to Tom, and I think Tom would be okay with being an alternate. Like I said, though, the guy has served for 3 years. He's obviously a principal at our high schools. He's very passionate about the city of Cranston. I don't think he would want to even be involved in a conversation where it talks about, him being in consideration against a diverse candidate. So for that reason in itself, I'm going to remove him from consideration, and I'm going to take Councilwoman Vargas's recommendation tonight, and I will be voting in favor of him. I want her to know that, we are who we say we are. We can speak and have discussions on passion, but, I don't think it was necessarily fair to Mr. Barbieri, and, to say that we're voting against, just because we're not voting for him, or we're necessarily racist or not helping with diversity. And maybe that's not the way that you try to portray it, but your passion coming out, it seemed that way. And, I'm mildly offended, but I know that's not who you are as a person. We've talked many, many times offline. I consider you a friend. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your fight. And, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be moving Tom from consideration. I hope you'll consider him for an alternate. Hopefully they can work together, and he can help show him the ropes moving forward, because I do strongly believe we need some experience. That's all I have today.
With the removal of the second candidate, I see no further discussion to be required on this topic. Everyone's spoken once in accordance with our rules. With that, motion to approve. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes. Appointment of Dean Pedrock I can never say Dean's last name.
Pedrakakis.
Ward 4 member, Councilman Brady. The motion to approve.
Motion
Motion approved.
Have a second.
Second.
Just to speak briefly, if I may, Council President, on his experience, or do you want to just go right to?
You can speak on his experience.
He's lived here his whole life. I know him personally. He has kids in Cranston. He's a business owner. He's an engineering background, civil construction management. He has a master's. He's been to numerous zoning board meetings. He's taken a vested interest in it. With the removal of Tom from that seat, he reached out, and he's very passionate about the position. So I look forward to hopefully him getting appointed, and all of us working with Dean moving forward.
Any questions on Mr. Pedrakakis' background? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
Yes.
Council Vice President Favicchio?
Yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes. Reports of city officers. We have the Cranston Art Commission on there tonight. I don't know how they would feel about potentially maybe holding this for us because it is 10 o'clock. If they are passionate about going, I'm sure we will all listen with bated breath. But I know we have the presentation. I don't know what their plan was tonight. Who is on from the Cranston Arts Commission?
Hello, I'm not sure if you can hear me. This is Danielle Izzy St. Pierre. I'm a resident of Ward 5 and the chair of the Cranston Arts Commission. I just had a few brief remarks I wanted to make. Nothing visual, so I'll be really quick.
Excellent.
Good evening, Council President Farina, members of the council and residents of Cranston. My name is Danielle Izzy St. Pierre and I am the chair of the Cranston Arts Commission and a resident of Ward 5. Since my predecessor, Leah Tovmajian Hill, gave her presentation in September of 2019, the council has produced, commission rather, has produced some excellent content, as well as an event which furthered our mission to engage the community with local arts and artists, which is arguably more important now than ever. In October of 2019, the commission organized the 6x6 event, which was hosted at the Artist Exchange at 50 Rolfe Square. 6 local artists were invited to present for 6 minutes each on their respective mediums. Included were a vocalist, photographer, storyteller, actor, fiber artist, and a muralist. This event built on the success of the public art installation of the Crane Flight mural by featuring Amy Bartlett Wright as a keynote. Some presenters brought examples of their work while others encouraged audience participation by passing around materials. This event was a fun way to engage the community while showing artists processes. Further, we are grateful to have had the opportunity to host an in-person event before the world went into lockdown due to COVID. In response to the pandemic and the collective duty to engage the community during this strange time, the commission developed the #ArtHeals social media campaign, which encourages local artists and crafters to submit photos and videos showing what they're working on while living in quarantine and trying to maintain a sense of community. At our meetings, there have been several residents who submitted suggestions for future projects, including public art installations, murals, and artist co-op galleries, which are still in very early stages of consideration. The last several months meetings have been focused around our next large public art project. The Arts Commission will be working closely with the Cranston Historical Society and public schools to produce historically significant student-produced murals on various public works buildings citywide. Moving forward, our goals remain the same: to continue engaging the community virtually, encourage creativity, and look forward to the days we can gather our community to celebrate the arts together in person. I would like to invite any Cranston residents present on this meeting to engage with the Cranston Arts Commission via social media, email, and by attending future meetings, which occur on the 3rd Monday of each month at 6 p.m., as we are always looking for input and ideas from fellow Cranstonians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. I appreciate the effort from the Arts Commission and your abridged remarks tonight.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Executive Communications, report on the hiring of special counsel consultants pursuant to Charter 1505. If you have any questions on that, now would be the time. Don't see any additional executive communications. Director Perillo, I'm assuming that is correct?
Sorry, correct.
Okay. Moving on to Council President Communications. I don't have a whole lot, just everybody stay safe. I know Council Vice President has been toying with the idea of potentially having some meetings in public again. Be rest assured, as we think about this, they would be hybrid meetings where we would try to do both a Zoom presence and an in-person presence. I do like the idea of maybe doing it in an auditorium. So he asked about that a couple weeks ago. So I've tasked him with going out and working with the clerks to make that logistically a reality. So I will let him work on that and figure out when we can actually get into a room together in some socially distant, masked up capacity. With that, I will just echo the words of Councilmember Vargas. Diversity is very important. I'm glad tonight we came to a resolution that allowed us to put a diverse candidate onto the zoning board. Thank you for your passion, Councilmember Vargas. With that, I'll move on to Councilmember Communications. Councilmember Donegan, traffic at Chapel View.
Thank you, Council President. I think we're all aware of the mess of a traffic that occurs around Starbucks in Chapel View and how much it backs up over there. And I've actually started getting some calls about it, which is not something that I had in the past. So I'm wondering if there's anything we can do with the business, with the property managers over there to try and work on the traffic configuration, because you can't maneuver anywhere when that backs up.
As a point of information, Councilmember Donegan, they were doing a really good job for a while with the reflow of the queue into the front of Blaze and Starbucks as they went around. I don't know. Sometimes I go there because, I do go to Shaw's and Starbucks an awful lot. I drink too much coffee. And sometimes they do have it set up like that, and other times they don't. So to the administration, I know we worked with them to get that set up and get the change. Why aren't they continuing with that queuing?
I do not have an answer why they changed back to that original, but I will inquire with the landlord and Starbucks to get that reconfigured where it was working, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it was the queuing was perfect. They were going around the long way and going in front of the building, and they weren't pushing the traffic out into that oncoming lane for Shaw's. I have to imagine Shaw's doesn't like it when they don't do that. So
yeah, we'll follow up and come up with some kind of compromise. We'll have the landlord work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the docket, Councilmember Brady and the Roosters.
I hope you can hear me finally. This is Anthony Paolino.
How you doing,
Can you
Anthony?
hear
We
me?
can hear you. Yep. I'll obviously
great.
resort to you and let you speak up on the issue.
All right, thank you very much. I'm very grateful to Councilman Brady. He's put up with my phone calls and emails and so on for the past couple of months. My wife and I and our family, we live at 450 Pippin Orchard Road for the last 27 years. I have my business on Reservoir Avenue. To say that we're invested in Cranston is an understatement. This past spring, our next door neighbor acquired some chickens and consequently also acquired a rooster. Sounds crazy, but this thing starts crowing as early as 4 a.m. every morning, 7 days a week. It goes on and off all day. It's gotten to the point where it's affecting our health, our well-being. It's almost like the complaints, or just like the complaints that you heard earlier regarding fire pits. We end up being locked in our home all summer with the windows closed, not being able to enjoy some fresh air because you can't believe how loud the crowing is. I spoke with the animal control officer. He agrees that they can be extremely loud, but the problem remains that my neighbor's zoning is A80, which has some kind of nebulous agricultural component to it, and the animal control officer won't do anything about it. He was in contact with people at zoning, and they said that because there's some portion of the zoning that mentions agriculture, that there's a roadblock to banning roosters. I have nothing against farms, nothing against farmers, nothing against people who want to have backyard chickens. That's a fad that goes all through the state. It's not a fad, but it's something that people have an interest in, and I support that wholeheartedly. to have roosters to have chickens to produce eggs or for whatever you want to do with them doesn't require you to have a rooster. The long and the short of it is that there's no rule regarding this. There was an ordinance, I understand, that was put in some years back, I think by Councilman Stikos, regarding roosters, the maintenance of chickens and roosters. One of the other issues, as an aside to this, is that my neighbor does not keep the chickens fenced in. They're allowed to roam free. There is no, they're right on my property line, not 30 feet from the rear of my home, which was where all the bedrooms are located. And many times during the course of the week, we'll walk outside our deck, walk outside the front door. You find a chicken in our flower beds, running across the driveway, running across the yard, scaring the crap out of my grandchildren who live with us. And on more than one occasion, I've seen them strutting down Pippin Orchard Road. Now, that's not something that's not only that I don't want to have in my property, but it's not good for the animal either to be running around in the middle of the street. As you know, Pippin Orchard Road can be busy at certain times of the day. It's really getting to the point where it's unbearable, and I've gone everywhere in terms of the animal control officer, as I mentioned. I tried contacting zoning, did not get a return phone call. I spoke to someone at I think it was minimum housing, and the gentleman, I forgot his name, but he was very nice. And he asked me where the chicken coops were or where he keeps them. I said, they're right on my property line, not 30 feet away from my house. And I've asked my neighbor, very nicely, politely, I went over to see him and asked him, please, can you do something about this? It's affecting my family. It's not a joke. If he was crowing at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, well, I guess we could put up with it. But this goes on all day, and it starts at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it goes on and on and on, and there's no respite from it. And I guess it's going to require something from the city council in order to address this. Like I said, this ordinance that was put in that evidently was passed some years back, but then for some reason vetoed by the mayor, maybe by pressure from farmers. My neighbor's not a farmer. He has a nice piece of property. He's got 5 acres or more, or at least 5 acres or 4 acres. He's in the real estate business. He is a RE/MAX broker. These are pets. Nobody runs a farm with 3 or 4 chickens and 1 rooster. So, the argument that potentially this is a farm, it's a working farm, it's a commercial farm, doesn't hold water if someone wanted to make that argument. Even down the street on the end of Pippin Orchard Road where Plainfield Pike comes in, I mean, I've lived here almost 30 years. There's a farm there, and I'm sure they have chickens, but they have a barn or a chicken coop or building situated right in the middle of their property that's not near any of the residential neighbors. And, okay, fine. No problem with that. But this is not a farm. This is a residential area. It's always been a residential area. Since I moved there, it was a residential area. The fact that there's some agricultural component to this that's nebulous, that no one can explain to me what that agricultural component is comprised of, leads me to believe that it doesn't qualify for that purpose. So I'm asking the council, please, to do something. Again, like the passionate arguments that were brought up by all those individuals about fire pits. I won't even mention the fact that these people also have a fire pit. And I know very well how that works. When the wind's blowing your way, forget it. Even closing the windows won't help you and putting the air conditioner on to try to take the smoke out of the house. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to ask for relief so that we can get back to the quiet enjoyment of our house that we've known for almost 3 decades. And I thank you.
Director Perillo.
Yes, unfortunately, I believe Mr. Paolino is right on point when it comes to the animal control officer that I spoke to. has said the same thing, as has minimum housing. There's nothing currently on any books regarding roosters in particular. I know I've seen emails from him. I know he's tried to reach out to his neighbor and work something out with him, and that hasn't really worked.
So short of that, we would need an ordinance change to address the problem.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I think it kind of falls in between minimum housing / zoning and animal control.
All right, so why don't we?
May I say something? May I say something? Well, there's an ordinance against barking dogs. I think I read that. I tried to look at the ordinances. If it was a barking dog that barked morning, noon, and night, I think the animal control officer would have some ability to exercise control over it. Am I correct in that?
To some degree. So what we'll do, Mr. Palino, is we'll get through Councilman Brady, we'll get together with the administration, the animal control officer, and zoning, and figure out the best way to move forward to see if there's a way we can solve the problem. You know, I see Councilman Stichels has his hand up, so he might have a piece of information.
Well, I just want to repeat my offer that I would be glad to sponsor a ban on roosters in non-commercial settings, because you can have an agricultural operation in A80 zoning, but it has to be a commercial operation. So if the guy has pets, I agree completely. He doesn't need a rooster.
Okay, so we'll start working on this for you, Mr. Palino, and Councilman Stichels might be ready to submit a ban on roosters. So I'll let Councilman Brady and Councilman Stichels take the ball on that for you. How's that sound?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for speaking tonight, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Brady. Thank you, Councilman Stichels. I appreciate it very much.
Councilmember Vargas, speeding on Broad Street.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Council President. So speeding on Broad Street, obviously we've seen it in the news. For those who have not, there was recently a woman who was going to be opening up Creperie Corner, and unfortunately was part of a tragedy where there was either some road rage or just speeding involved in that accident where she was a victim of. And as a result, she's obviously in the hospital, and I'm quite not sure if she still is right now or not, but my get well wishes and speedy recovery goes out to her and her family. But speeding's been an issue, and not only on Broad Street, but throughout obviously the city. But Broad Street and Narragansett Boulevard has been a concern that I put more than once on the under council member communications. And I believe Representative McNamara also sent out a letter for the record to the clerk's office. And so I reached out to the police department in hopes that we can get one other traffic study done, where just about a year ago, as a matter of fact, maybe right around this time, there was a traffic study that was also done. And the police was very cooperative on that, and the miles per hour, the speeding wasn't as what I anticipated it to be, in the sense of a dramatic, overwhelming amount of speeding. However, the recent stats that were just sent to me on another traffic study that was done now a year later, was that and it was done within the last week, was that the average speed was 29 miles per hour. Now, but maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I spoke to the department, to the PD, and I was told that they were out there in about an hour or so. There was at least about 35 tickets issued. Speeding continues. The Village, for example, the mile per hour there is 25. That's the speed limit. I think we discussed this at one of our meetings just about a month or two ago. regarding dropping down to 15, and we were told pretty much that's more of a state issue where we can't bring it down to 15 because that's more for school zone. We can't have a cruiser or detail on Broad Street or Narragansett Boulevard or Park Ave all day. We also can't continue to have traffic studies 1 year or every 2-3 months after another. Eventually, traffic studies are going to become, I don't want to say irrelevant, but not productive. Now, Broad Street's a main road, I get it. I'm wondering if, and I've had a conversation with the administration, and my hopes is that we can have some sort of a conversation on a policy. Now, I am not a big proponent of speed bumps or humps or however many call it, the rubber ones or the ones that are a partial speed bump where there's still a gap between, so motorcycles to avoid accidents. However, with the excessive amount of speeding and accident happening, and the fact that we have, I know we're going into already, we're in fall, going into the winter, but we do have in the village also business owners that have outdoor seating. When you drive by there at 25, the pedestrians will look at you like you are going 50. And so I'm hoping that we can have some sort of a policy or discussion at this time, or a petition going, which I have door knocked to businesses in the village, and they're all in favor of a speed bump or some sort of traffic engineer where Steve Mulcahy can give it a look and see what we're able to do in options. I emailed Mr. Ken Mason and Mr. Steve Mulcahy, the traffic engineer, in hopes that we can put our brains together and figure out what we're able to do, because it's just an ongoing issue. And so if the administration has any policies in place at all, I was told that there was some sort of conversation that was taking place on the potential study of speed bumps. I know the rubber ones are not as effective. They break a lot, but there's I know concern of the fire department, maybe the police department, if there was a speed bump and the access going over it or damage maybe to their vehicles or so forth. But many other towns have it. And I don't know if a digital solar kind of a panel, very similar to the one on Pontiac right outside of Chester Barrows, is a potential to reduce some sort of a traffic where it tells you the speed, if that would be an option as well to place right around Broad Street near the village area, a little further up or so. That's where I would ask the engineer to take a look and give me his experience, because obviously I'm not an expert at that. But I'm trying to figure out how we can put our brains together and our heads together and see what outcome we can do, because I just, otherwise I'm going to keep adding speeding on Broad Street on our agenda every few months. And I don't know if they ever got back to Councilman Hopkins on even on his suggestion at one point, which was like the 3D imaging of optical illusion or so of speed bumps or any other options that we could potentially work on. So looking for the administration on some sort of a guidance, looking forward on input from all of you as well on the council to find out what we can do. If I have to put a petition together, which I've knocked on businesses on Broad Street, that they've all in support of a speed bump in that specific area, residents as well, whether it's 80-90% of the people. I'm not going to say that the speed bumps are going to avoid speeding as a whole, but if we put a speeding bump, of course, I think Director Perillo, if you're still on the call, we had discussed the potential of people calling, maybe complaining, there's people speeding right in front of them and the noise. And if that was to be placed potentially at the city cost, then if there was ever a time where they wanted to remove a speed bump, that could, some cities and towns have a policy where then the neighbors would have to come together and remove it at their own expense. but I'm really trying to just poke around and see what we can do, because it's just rather overwhelming to know it, and hope. I just don't want to see someone lose their life because of speeding. And again, this situation was road rage. Speed bump, some would argue it would have made it worse, the impact of an accident. But if we can prevent some sort of speeding, if we can prevent speeding some way or the other, I'm open to ideas. Director Pearl, I'm not sure if you've heard back from the traffic engineer at all.
On Broad Street in particular, no. I think speeding is a citywide issue. We met with Councilman Stichels a couple of weeks ago, Ken Mason and I, on Gray Street to try to address that problem. And people were flying by us as we stood there. So it's a problem everywhere throughout the city. And I think what needs to happen is we need to have some type of subcommittee to decide how we're going to move forward as a city when it comes to speeding. I think a combination of speed humps, electronic signage, some additional car posts by PD, maybe some, I don't know. There's got to be a myriad of things that we have to do. One thing's not gonna solve it. Obviously, everyone would love to have a policeman on their street 24/7. Unfortunately, that can't happen. But I think a combination of, again, maybe speed humps, if that's something the city wants to do. But again, police and fire are kind of leery on that due to response time. So that is an issue that we need to address with the police department and the fire department. I know Mr. Mason's concerned about the plows with speed humps in the winter, damaging plows and the speed humps getting dug up by the plows. And there's always obviously what's the cost going to be of installing these speed humps all over the city? What are the parameters going to be? Is it just going to be side streets? Is it just going to be main roads? Is it going to be X amount of feet from a stop sign, X amount of feet from an intersection, not next to a blind curve? There's all different parameters that other cities and towns have put in place. Like you mentioned, 90% of the citizens on the street have to sign a petition saying they want it. 100% of the people who abut the speed hump have to want it. And then basically, if they don't want it, it's going to be removed at their cost. So these are just some ideas that I think we all need to toss around and kind of focus on what we feel could work. It could be trial and error. I know we're trying to do the bump outs on Derbyshire, in that neighborhood, Castleton Estates. I know we're trying to do that in that area. But I think Ken said that's a $25,000 or $30,000 speed reduction mechanism. That gets kind of expensive if we start doing that all over the city. So I think there's a lot to discuss, and I do not have an answer for you right now on Broad Street, Councilwoman.
Great, thank you. If I can just ask two quick questions, Director Perillos. I guess one is more of a school zone. If we can look into if we do have a policy, or what policy was put in place at the time that there was a speed bump that was placed on Shore Ave, right across from Rhodes Elementary School. Edgewood Elementary doesn't have a speed bump. That was a concern from a constituent. And obviously being a parent of a child who goes to that school as well, and seeing the overwhelming amount of speeding and people going right through even school buses sometimes, even when they have the stop sign out, is rather concerning. But two, I guess so that's one, do we have a policy for that? Or how did that come about? And two, are you suggesting maybe having some sort of speed hump policy? Because the city, are you saying Cranston doesn't have a speed hump policy or subcommittee? And if not,
we
maybe have one?
We have no policy right now when it comes to speed
okay.
hump. So it's something,
can we,
if you wanted to create something, you need to have police and fire on there along with Director Mason. There's definitely some conversations that need to be had.
Okay. So maybe I can connect with you or any other council members at all that perhaps want to work on any type of potential looking into any policy on on speed humps in the city, and wondering if we might take a few policies that are already in place in other cities and towns. I know Providence, for example, has speed bumps all around, and wondering what their response time is when it comes down to police department or fire department, and maybe put something together on the potential policy for the city. Is there a reason why we chose the other area to do a speed bump pilot, I guess? Castle, you said, is that Castle something?
Castleton Estates, we're doing the bump outs. Derbyshire, that neighborhood, we're gonna do those bump outs. I think we're doing them end of the summer, I believe, to try to reduce the speed in that neighborhood.
How was that selected, if you don't mind me asking, that area?
The council voted on it.
Okay. So we can do something, so we could potentially do something like that again if we allocate funds for a study like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything restricting.
I mean, now it's rough times now, but
I just think you just got to, obviously, thank God Bob Strom's not here anymore. But financially, I mean, it's expensive, 30,000 a shot, so.
no, that is, no, I get it. All right. All right. So I'll reach out to some cities and towns as well, just to kind of get a sense of what their policies are. Unless you have anything or you're aware of any other cities that you perhaps we can reach out to, or I'm not sure if anyone in the office would be able to reach out in hopes to have that information.
I have Johnston's already.
Okay. Okay. Does it have the response time on there too with speed bumps?
No, it just goes
The
through
police-
the parameters of how does a street get the opportunity to put a speed hump in. Talks about the petition, the 100%, the 80%, the removal costs, stuff, not the cost, the removal charge to the neighborhood if they decide to remove it, where it goes and so forth. So it kind of breaks it down in those terms.
Okay. All right. All right. So what I'll do, unless any council members, again, I'm open to ideas on here. And I've been open to ideas even within the residents as well, what they think, whether it's, some have proposed cameras, some have said the digital sign, speed bumps. I know there's an expense that comes with it. It's definitely a tough time right now with the budget, but I'm just trying to figure out what we are able to do and how we can go about trying to reduce the amount of speeding, if anything. I mean, I know there's a no chase or no pursuit after like ATVs and all that are driving by all night.
Yeah, correct. And cameras do work. However, they're good for a short term, because once people know the camera's there, they're going to slow down. But the company requires you to pay them X amount of money each month. So at some point that becomes counterproductive, because people are slowing down, which is great, but it's costing the city X amount of dollars a month to a contractor. So the cameras do work, but usually not long term.
Okay.
I think Major Quirk's on the call. He may have some input, Councilwoman.
Yeah, and the major and the lieutenant have been very helpful in the sense of making sure that we have the traffic studies being done. But I guess Major, I guess my question I get directly to you would, to the chair, would be, what other options, I guess, do we have? Or what do you think, or what, or objections on speed bumps, or is that something that we would have to have a line and circle back?
I think I have to mirror what Director Perillo had just mentioned. I mean, he definitely has the knowledge and experience as far as he is with the Johnston Police Department. And I mean, as tragic as that accident was on Broad Street, it's just, I'd have to say an isolated incident. I mean, that easily could have taken place on Situate Avenue, on Reservoir Avenue. It's, like I said, it's a terrible accident, and the department, I mean, wishes the people involved, especially the pedestrian, a speedy recovery. But it was one of those things where, like I said, and that was mirrored by the traffic officers out at the scene. Could have happened anywhere. And as far as the numbers that were sent to you this morning, Councilwoman, it's with the data box, speed data box, that was put in place in 2 locations on Broad Street. One at Broad and Armington, which was further up, as you're aware, on Broad Street, but the one closer was Broad at Doyleston Drive, which is just north of where that accident took place. And that was in place. And I know you took time to go over this, and one was sent to the director also, but I'm just want to mirror what it says. Basically, that was in place for a week. And out of, let's see, I'll give you a quick synopsis here. Let's see, out of 40,000, almost 41,000 vehicles, 40,684 to be exact, that were recorded in that time frame, that being north and southbound on Broad Street. The average median speed was 29 miles per hour. So that's definitely within the lines. I mean, it's the speed limit there is 25. So to say for a week's time, 29 miles per hour, I mean, that's pretty much where it should be. I mean, there were a few, if you look at the numbers, I mean, you'll see one at 50, one at 60. They take the highs and lows and they average it all out. So for that many vehicles, and even going further up on Broad Street, Broad and Armington, it just so happens that average speed also worked out to be 29 miles per hour. So to answer your question, I don't know what the answer is. Like the director said, and I've got 35 years on the job, and to this day, that seems to be one of the main complaints of, and rightfully so, people who do call and they complain about speeding and so forth. But they're just as tough as it is to hear. There's not enough. There's not enough officers. We could have another 50 officers on the job, and to say, we're going to put an officer on every complaint that comes in, it's just it's not feasible. Because if we were to let's say, we do have a traffic division, but as you're aware, we had another tragedy last week on Cranston Street with an elderly woman, and as of yesterday, today I should say, one of the traffic officers was still working on that case. There's a lot to it. So with a traffic division of 4 officers, and to have them to go and concentrate on the complaints that come in, that is a priority. But just like when we put beat officers, let's say, on a particular concern that comes in, whether it's stop signs or speeding and so forth, when a high priority call comes in, we have to pull that officer. So they could be out there for an hour, they could be out there for 10 minutes, and when a call comes in and deemed to be a high priority call, we have to pull that officer off those traffic posts. So I don't know. I don't know if those traffic humps or bumps were, whatever way people want to call them. I don't know if they are the answer, because now you have to deal with, like was said, fire vehicles, police, other emergency vehicles going to a call, snow plows. I know one of the traffic officers, I discussed with him today. I said, what's your feeling on 29? He said, well, he says, some of the complaints are coming in Patuxent Village. If the average speed north and southbound is 29, he says, most likely if the average speed heading southbound on Broad Street from Park Avenue is 29, it's most likely going to decrease as most operators are going in towards a business district with stores and so forth. It's not to say that you wouldn't have one person like you did the night of the accident, or excessive speed was determined. I mean, God forbid that could happen again. But for the most part, most people are paying attention, and law-abiding citizens, if their average speed is 29, it's safe to say they're probably going a lot less than that when they approach the village, knowing there's going to be congestion with pedestrians and vehicles in that area. So so to answer your question, I don't know what the perfect scenario is as far as speed bumps or humps. I know, as far as what the director also mentioned earlier on Castleton Drive, that the geographics of that particular street is different than Broad Street, and with that, and what I mean by that is Broad Street is more of a congested cut through to Warwick and so forth, where Castleton, for the most part, is even though it can be a cut through, it's safe to say that a good majority of people that use that road live either in that neighborhood or surrounding streets, whereas Broad Street could be just people coming up from Warwick, making their way into Providence, or the other way around.
Now, Major,
So-
do you happen to know at all about the speed bump that's on Shore Ave? Do you know how long that's been there?
On Shore Avenue?
Yeah, right outside of Rhodes Elementary.
I don't know. I mean, I could probably do some research on
Or
that.
maybe the administration or someone. Yeah, I'm just curious again, just because if we're talking about.
Lamas,
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay.
Can we put a follow-up on this in the Public Works meeting?
Yeah,
to-
please, if we don't mind, that would be
That way-
great. And then what I'll also do in the meantime, I'll see if we can, if Director Perillo, if you can send me the, at least for the time being, the Johnston speed bump installation policy. And then I'll take a look at some other ones, and maybe that's something that needs to be worked on, just because I feel that although that needs to be worked on, at the very same time, some sort of immediate solution should be done. And I don't know what that immediate solution should be, but I do know there's been a lot of speeding and just reckless driving, people going right through stop signs on Park Ave and Broad Street. Those are the type of calls that I get all the time. But if we can do a follow-up and add this definitely to, thank you, Council President, to the next safety.
29 is slow. I thought it'd be a lot higher than that. 29 is not bad. It's only 4 miles. That's not bad at all. That might not even qualify for a speed hump.
Well, the thing too, I think it depends on the day of the week, but also if you're even in the village and you're going, if that was even 29 going through the village and you were standing as a pedestrian outside and having a bagel, pizza or something, they're going to look at you like you're a horrible driver, not being respectful of pedestrians going at 29.
But you're not going to get pulled over at 29, I can tell you that.
Yeah, you may not get pulled over maybe until like 10 over or so, but the point is that if you're in the village though, maybe a speed bump there could potentially be a possibility, just because people are still going a little over and there's kids walking. It's just Friday night, Saturday, it's jamming and people are still speeding. But I'll follow up with you, Director Perillo, and if you can follow up also on the speed bump on Rhodes Elementary. I'm curious what we could also do for Edgewood Highland, because that one school has it, the other one doesn't, and there's a lot of speeding in that area. Obviously, right now it's COVID. There's probably not as many students going in person, but nonetheless, there's still students at the school, and so Councilman Stichels and I both received an email from a constituent regarding speeding in that particular area.
Sure.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Stichels, you have some matters on the docket.
Yeah, I'd like to request that it's late and that those be referred to the upcoming ordinance committee meeting.
Makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate that, Councilman Stichels, as the rest of us do as well.
Council President,
Yes.
just for clarification, Councilman Stichels, you want those on the ordinance agenda or Public Works?
Ordinance is fine.
And how about the traffic at Chapel View? Did you want that continued?
Yeah, we'll continue that because I know
Okay.
we'll get an update at ordinance or Public Works, whichever one's later, to give the administration a little more time.
Great. Thanks.
Old business. Yeah, sorry, Mike. Apologies.
Yeah. Just re-
Old business, there is no old business, introduction of new business. I'll say a motion to send all the new business to the proper committee as a block.
so moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Stichels?
Yes.
Councilman Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
yes,
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes, now on the block. Motion approved.
Motion approved.
Second,
Second.
under discussion, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stichels?
Yes.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas?
Yes.
Councilmember Jermaine?
Yes.
Councilmember Donegan?
Yes.
Councilmember Brady?
Yes.
Councilmember Paplaskas?
yes,
Council Vice President Vecchio?
Yes.
Council President Farina?
Yes, there is no miscellaneous business on the clerk's desk this evening. The city council's next regular monthly meeting will be on October 26, 2020. If there's no further business to come before us tonight, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank
You too.
Thank
Take
you.
care.